Well, we're heading down to the spine of France today, to Châtellerault. It's more or less in the centre of this country, and it's the flattest approach. We're on the edge of the Loire and the Landre River here, as the riders now come down to a perfectly long, straight flat road. Let's have a go back earlier today then. This was the rollout this morning. One rider eliminated yesterday, with Vasily Kirienka coming in late. He had a great season, and he must be sick to have missed the time cut yesterday. He's the first rider to be eliminated from the Tour. And so we're 5 riders down now from the 198 that started. Within the first 1,000 metres of the day, we have an attack. And the peloton said, hang on guys, this is far too soon. They formed a breakaway group of 4 men, and there they are. They're still ahead at the moment by nearly 8 minutes. Utazun, Delage, Meersman and Talabardon. The Belgians are delighted because they've got a Belgian in the breakaway, and the French have got riders in there as well. Now, it's an up and a down day, quite changeable the weather so far this week, but it's going to go 72 degrees is good. High winds, though, coming in from the south to southwest. Our pictures, as always, coming to you now in high definition. And we're going to see some beautiful scenes, of course, along the way. The riders themselves are feeling the cross-to-head power of the wind. 193 riders left of the 198. As I say, we've lost 5. 17 of the 22 teams are still intact with their full 9-man complement. And the total distance we've gone so far, 606 miles. It feels like a lot more of the 2,000+ miles of this race. Let's join the leaders and 2 riders in the break, Paul, from the same team. And again, it's our old favourite attacking team, Française des Jeux.
That seems to be the tactic that Marc Madiot, the team manager, has adopted for this opening week or 10 days of the Tour de France, and make sure that there's a man in every breakaway. Because, believe it or not, if you want to break down the Tour de France, it's not always just about winning a stage. It's about getting as much publicity as possible during the race for your team sponsor, and having a man in the breakaway for a long period of time on live television, whether it's in France or around the globe, is good television coverage and good sponsorship.
Yes, of course it is. And the Tour de France today is coming through a slightly different type of terrain than we've seen since we came through La Vendée, through Brittany, and then on through Normandy. We're now heading down through the Sarthe, which is not a famous river here in France, into the department of 2 famous rivers, Loire et Cher, and finishing in the Landre. Well, now, the big point on the profile, Paul, the sprint coming so near the finish.
And of course, it's a flat race. It's completely flat today. And now that green S is a sprint point at the end for the green jersey points classification for the best sprinter in the race. However, I have to say, Phil, talking to Alan Piper this morning before the start, he said, well, we're not going to go for that. Mark Cavendish is not going to use any energy out on the course because it's just too important.
Looks like we've got a problem here for Kevin de Wet, Belgian rider on the Quick-Step team. The Quick-Step team are not having a great start to the Tour so far. There's rumours starting there's a little bit of discord within the team. The management denying that. Sylvain Chavanel, who was to be their star name as he was in the opening week last year, has had all sorts of problems with falls, and he's suffering quite a nastily bruised clavicule or collarbone, as well as 1 or 2 other injuries. And he was behind the gain yesterday. But this is Kevin de Wet. First time we've seen him this week in the Tour de France. Now, a uniform picture as we show you now. It's the Garmin-Cervelo boys on the front. Our old favourite from Northern California, Dave Zabriskie, just off picture to our left, heading up the chase here. And not surprisingly again, Garmin-Cervelo doing the majority of the pacemaking at the back, 69%, because, Paul,
they've got 2 reasons to work, Phil. Obviously, the first reason to work is because Thor Hushovd is a man in the yellow jersey, and he can keep it till the end of today. Tomorrow, I think his foundations might start to crumble a fraction, because we slowly then start to climb up to a finish which is around about 3,000 feet above sea level. But of course, they also believe that Tyler Farrar, who took a back seat in the sprint yesterday, has got the ability to get himself stage win number 2.
Well, we're heading down to Châtellerault, which was the scene of the first win for Mark Cavendish. The only other rider to win there when we finished there also had the same initials, and his name is Mario Cipollini. So if you haven't got the initials MC, you can't possibly win the stage today, apparently. And well, it was very popular too when he won that stage. Everybody was there to congratulate him. Big moment. Tom Bonham back at the team car, chatting here, I think, with Wilfred Peters. Yes, it is, as they drop back to the top. This is the man we saw lying in agony on the road 2 days ago and desperate to get to the finish before they dropped the guillotine at the end. He made it by about 4 minutes, so he stayed in the Tour. He went to hospital. X-rays showed no broken bones, especially with his collarbone. It is painful, though. It's his right collarbone. but he's in the race. That's the most important thing. He's got chance now to recover.
Well, he's got to try and recover over the next couple of days. I think Tom Boonen has got ascending form. He's actually stopping at the side of the road. He's obviously got some mechanical problem. That was Wilfred Peters having a quick chat with him. There's no real need to panic at this point in the race. Wilfred Peters has got out the mechanic. Everybody
He's
seems to be
panicking, is he?
Everybody's nicely, calmly collected.
He's not giving up, is he? He's standing there as though he might be abandoning the race here, because this is less than no panic. This is absolutely no panic, and I'm wondering, oh, he's looking at the bike, I think. So it doesn't look like a man who is going to give up. Surely not after the way he survived here. Well, they think yes, he is. The abandon of Tom Boonen from the Tour, because once you see the cameras hone in, then you know it's not good. Well, he must have felt pretty rough to drop back like that.
Just out of interest, I mean, you know the guy with the red shirt on the left-hand side. That's actually the doctor of Team Quick-Step. He was riding in the car. They obviously wanted to see how Tom Boonen was going to be out on the course, but the doctor there obviously on board just in case he could be of any help. And he's going to get in touch, and he's being left down at the side of the road, and he'll get picked up by car number 2.
Always sad, Tom Boonen then out of the Tour de France. He's a big name, let's face it, former green jersey. I mean, this is 2 days ago now, and there you have it. When he was sitting on the floor, he got a real bang there. We thought he'd broken his car. Look at the blood just coming through his shorts here. He's trying to just kill the pain for the moment. Teammate Adi Engels dropped back to pace him home. He got home, but it looks like he hasn't got better.
Well, he lost 13 minutes. He got inside of the elimination time on that occasion as he came up to the line here with his teammate Adi Engels. And Team Quick-Step certainly are at the wars here in the Tour de France this year, Phil, because not only now have we just seen the abandon of Tom Boonen, there he is in the team car. I've been in this situation myself before. It is not a great thing to abandon the Tour de France. Any other bike race in the world, you don't mind so much if you have to pull out, but it's a big decision to pull out of the Tour de France, and Tom Boonen's going to have to try and get himself, get his mind back into a frame set to come back and race once you walk away from the biggest bike race in the world.
The next
maybe 4th category climbs, but that's a real leg bender.
Well, it's also a beautiful area of France too, and there'll be a lot of people watching us down there, and then we'll be setting fur for our journey down to the Pyrenees, which start on Thursday with a hilltop finish at Les Ardennes. If you recall the accident to Lance Armstrong, when he got up and won the stage at Les Ardennes, when the handbag on the crowd hooked on his handlebars and brought him crashing to the ground, taking with him the Euskadi Iban Mayo, while Jan Ullrich watched in amazement, couldn't believe what was going on, and Tyler Hamilton, I think it was, came and asked Jan Ullrich to slow down so Lance could catch up again.
Well, that's the national champion, a member of the Team Quick-Step. His teammate Tom Boonen just pulling out of the race just a few moments ago, and he said a big thank you to his team manager last night, because he wanted to abandon yesterday. He's got a very sore shoulder because he too involved in one of those crashes just the day before yesterday, and the team manager said, look mate, you can't pull out of this race. You're the French national champion. This is the biggest race in the world. You're wearing the tricolor jersey on your back. Carry on. And he said he felt like abandoning, and today he's very happy to be in the race. It's amazing how if you can just pull yourself through that bad stretch, it can start to get better. Fingers crossed for Sylvain Chavanel, because he was one of the great animators of last year's Tour with 2-stage victories.
2-stage victories, 2 days in the yellow on separate occasions, 1 day in the green. That was a great Tour last year for Sylvain Chavanel. 12 months down the road, the exact opposite. It's been a very unlucky Tour for Sylvain. He's had a great start to the year as well. Well, this looks like a tyre change here. Julian Dean, perhaps, the lead-out man. He's not going to worry too much because he knows the peloton are not rushing to grab those feeding bags, so he gets a quick change and a gentle shove off as they are now entering the town here of Chaumont-sur-Loire. This is where the feeding station is, and there's the beautiful River Loire, 1,020 kilometers long, which is about 630 miles. Longest river in France. So coursing over the river bridge, the Loire always has these rocky outcrops here, wherever I've seen it anyway, especially down through the city of Tours. And the peloton in no hurry. Somewhere down this long line we're going to see Julian Dean making his way through the cars to get back up. Otherwise he's going to miss out on lunch.
Yeah, he will have to get right to the front end of the fast food section of the peloton this afternoon. Talking about Mario Cipollini, who was the most successful sprinter in the Giro d'Italia and one of the greatest sprinters that we've commentated on over many years. As far as he's concerned, today is an ideal day for Mark Cavendish. He knows that the team is in perfect formation and they know how to deliver him to the last 200 or 300 meters quite perfectly. A little bit of a change of tune to Mario Cipollini, who was somewhat critical of Mark Cavendish in the early part of his career.
Yes, well, nobody likes a usurper coming through, a man who's going to take them off the top. And Cavendish didn't recognise rivals because he didn't think he had any. He was the best, that's the way it is. And he's proving himself to be absolutely correct. Go for it for sure.
Well, that's after the 3 weeks, and the difficult thing about the lesser competitions in the Tour de France, if you like, we talk about the yellow jersey for the man who covers the race in the shortest overall time. But those competitions, the King of the Mountains competition or the points competition, which were introduced to reward the sprinters and the climbers, you've got to be alert every day for those competitions. You've got to sprint 2 or 3 times throughout the day in the mountains, 2 or 3 times a day at the on the stages, and so you've got to be counting and always present. Otherwise, like Mark Cavendish saw a couple of years ago, it's a competition which is very easy to lose.
It's indeed, it is, and of course he lost it to Thor Hushoff, which doesn't make matters very much better either. We're moving in towards the next department shortly, the Indre-et-Loire, as we say goodbye to the Loire-Cher. And it gets a little bit hilly. We start to climb a little bit higher above sea level, but it is not going to be too bad. We're looking here at the Chateau de Chenonceau, which I think that's the castle of 6 women, isn't it, Paul?
No, I don't know where you got that from. Oh yeah, it is the castle of 6 women. Amazing. When the municipality of Chenonceau decided this is what they wanted to do, they built a castle here back in the 13th century. I'd forgotten all about that because it was actually burned down and razed to the ground in 1411, and that's when it disappeared a little bit from my memory. But it was then it was rebuilt on the River Cher itself because they decided they wanted a slightly more beautiful view.
Wow, you did well to get out of that one, Paul. I'll give you that one. There's a look at that beautiful garden.
If this was
baseball, like Hampton Court Palace.
If this was baseball, you'd have just thrown me a curveball.
Well, isn't it magnificent? It really is. The tax collector, by the way, also was part of the current chateau here, Thomas Bohier, who was the tax collector for Charles VIII and Louis XII. Good heavens. So don't forget to log on to NBCSports.com/podium. Every day during the Tour de France, your chance to win a trip to the Tour de France next year, a Cervelo S5 bike, a clean bottle, a Giro helmet. But you need today its code word, which is speed. As we spin around here, the Chateau of Chenonceau. This beautiful chateau here with its 4 round towers and its magnificent garden and moat. Boy, France is a beautiful country, isn't it? And happily, they haven't destroyed it and built apartments there instead. There you go then, Paul telling us all exactly what's going on. 7 times a rider in the Tour de France himself. So as the field continue, don't forget if you're enjoying our coverage, and judging by all your emails and tweets, I think you are enjoying the live coverage here in Versus, but there's plenty more, and everything we can't tell you, you can find out. Just go to NBCSports.com/cycling, and there's an app there that you can follow along with us. You can also download an app which will give you a Tour All Access, and it's will bring you right up to date with the Tour de France as we move along the highways of France, with a little bit of a visit into Italy later in the Tour de France route. Now we're just on 77 kilometers, 48 miles from the finish. The gap doesn't move, does it? I think the computer's broken. 4 minutes 42 seconds is the gap. Very soon we will see that gap starting to come down, because they'll all be looking for Philippe Gilbert's green jersey at the next spin point.
Sprinter I'd forgotten to mention earlier on, we were throwing around a few names of sprinters, Romain Felu, Ben Swift of the UK, and of course Alessandro Petacchi, but one young sprinter on the block from the Russian squad, Team Katusha, Denis Galimzinanov. He could be the man to create the massive surprise, and if he crosses the line in first place, I hope you're the one who's going to say his name. 2 minutes and 15 seconds. I think the firepower now, Phil, is starting to disappear from this leading group of 4. As you can see, it's Yannick Talbourdon on the front. Celebrated his birthday yesterday. It's Jean-René Bernado's birthday today, and I don't think this is the kind of course when Team Europcar have got the big chance to try and pay him back. Oh, there's another crash, and you can see the polka dot jerseys there. Radio Shack are involved in it. 2 Radio Shack riders on the far side. Somebody has got a bike crumpled on the floor there. Doesn't look as if anybody's too badly injured.
Well, it looks one of the riders is Popovic down there. He's the rider on the right at the moment. Zubeldia, who was the one man who seemed to be avoiding the crashes, is also down. Well, this is amazing, Paul. Third day, third time unlucky for Radio Shack. They're in the thick of the pile-ups again.
Well, again, it wasn't in such a bad position in the peloton. It was around about 30th to 40th position. And there, in fact, somebody else has gone.
That's Kruziger, that.
That's not good. That's not good, because he's one of the possible team leaders for Team Astana. He's finished first place in the Tour of Romandie previously. He's won the Tour of Switzerland, and he's a guy who we've expected to be a long-term chance. The Radio Shack rider on the far side, he's caused some chaos here. Tony Galopin, the sprinter on Team Cofidis, he got caught in the turmoil and the traffic jam.
Yes, because so anxious because the crash is on the right of the road there. Team cars have blocked up the road to get the men away. They've done it. They're all getting back in to the action. It won't be quite such a routine chase back now for Roman Kreuziger, winner of the Tour de Suisse in the past. He's a good young lad, this, going up, and he'll have to fight back now. It looks like he's hurt perhaps his left wrist. But these boys are get in the bunch and then get back and see the doctors once the pressure goes up. But the way he's resting that hand on the handlebars, he's feeling a little bit sore. This is Popovic. He's got a good pacemaker there.
Well, he was 6th overall in the Giro d'Italia, Roman Kreuziger there. He was the best young rider in that competition. 4th in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He's a serious talent for the future. Just coming up to the right age to be a good bike rider. He's 26 years of age. In the past, as you mentioned, Tour of Switzerland winner. He was a world junior road racing champion. As we look at number 156, Tony Galopin, he's got 3 uncles who are professional bike riders. In fact, Alain Galopin, who one of the team managers for Radio Shack, may well be in that car there. Popovic, you can see the bandages on his shoulders over on the left-hand side. But the peloton was riding pretty hard, so these guys are going to have a long, hard chase. Riding behind the team car like this, they may well find them. In fact, the race referee now is having a quick chat to Team Radio Shack and saying, can you pull out of the way? Now, what he risks happening here is not only getting himself a financial fine for himself and the riders, but for the riders, the possibility of a time penalty too, which could be as high as 30 seconds.
They'll turn a blind eye for maybe 50 yards, maybe 100, but they won't allow blatant pacing. And there is a lot of complaint coming over on race radio right now about what they're seeing on television. So, well, that's up to them. Happily, it's not our decision. It's Radio Shack trying to get their riders back in the race and taking a couple of passioners along for the ride. Welcome back, but take a look at these pictures. This has just happened, and this is Bradley Wiggins here. It looks as though he might have hurt his collarbone. Tyler Farrar has been involved in this pile-up as well and has just pedalled off to chase back to the field. Boysenhagen, who won yesterday, is down, and you can see the Sky teammates looking very, very worried here as to what has happened to the team leader. And you can probably hear the ambulances coming up as well. This was a massive crash. Farrar has gone. He's a bit behind. He's got some work to do to chase back into this. Let's just see if we can show you what happened. There was this massive pile-up of riders. We really caught it on the helicopter just here. Wiggins was down, Farrar was down, Boysenhagen, who won yesterday, was down. And I think indeed Chris Horner is also down in there for Radio Shack. So there's a number of the big names have been caught here, and this has all happened at about 37 kilometers from the finish of the stage. And there's a long time gone by now, so whatever happens, Wiggins is losing a lot of time here, and he was expected to be a challenger in this year's Tour de France. Complete chaos amongst the riders as they try to sort out the whole problem. And as to why it happened, that will be no doubt the conjecture later on. But right now, there's no doubt some 20 riders at least are coming. There is Tyler Farrar. These are looking back pictures, don't forget. There's Farrar being picked out of the mess. Looks as though he's hurt his right side. As he goes away, now we can show you Wiggins again. Now, these are live pictures now. Well, this is really sad. It looks like it's the end of the tour for Bradley Wiggins. Well, the pictures aren't good, Paul, are they? Bradley Wiggins has been taken to the side of the road there and has sat down. The ambulance has been called up. It looks like the end of the line for Bradley. That is terrible.
Well, it really is terrible, I have to say, Phil, and he's not the only victim of this crash here. And this is Rémi Poriol, who's gone down as well. I noticed Chris Horner was in the ditch on the far side, and it was almost at the point. I was just listening to race radio, and they said the riders are now starting to pick up a cross-tail wind, an indication the speed is starting to go up. Riders will have felt the same thing. They would have been panicking a fraction, trying to move up to the front, and then bang, it crackled on race radio, shoot, and a lot of big names were caught out in it.
Well, that is so sad for Great Britain to see Bradley Wiggins in that position. Everybody was feeling so confident that man could deliver for us this year. I'll switch my country now back home to Great Britain, because that is a very, very sad sight indeed. Did you notice all of the Sky riders who had waited, including Boyson Harden, yesterday's winner? He was back there as well. And there's a lot of riders now left to chase because they spent a lot of time at the crash scene.
And there are no cars behind. The cars are scattered all over the place, waiting for their various riders to try and get them back into the main field. It'd be interesting to note who exactly has not missed out. I can see a lot of Leopard Trek riders in that group, though, the ones with the black and white shirts. I'd be sure that Andy Schleck has got himself in there. But yes, 3 Sky riders waited a long time for Bradley Wiggins, but I think it's his Tour de France over.
Yes, extremely sad indeed. The pan down the road, the long... I'm just hearing the name of Leipheimer on the race radio at the moment as well, and I'm not sure why they were saying the small groups returning. This, I think they're announcing the return to the peloton of riders. Leipheimer, Vinokurov has got back into the main group. There is the second big chase group there. Now you see the referees are keeping empty spaces. They call it a barrage. They open up fresh air, so riders must rejoin the race only with their own effort. Now I'll give you one more view of this crash before we have to get up to the front here, but this is how it happened. Our helicopter was above the riders as it came down, and it all off to the right. You see the wind may have had an effect here. Look, we're in the trees. Look at the number of riders in that ditch there as they jump around trying to retrieve the bicycles. Tyler Farrow is the sprinter who went down. Wiggins is still sat down apparently and has retired from the Tour de France, which is extremely sad. Riders involved, I think, did involve at least the delay of Levi Leipheimer, but I think he's chased his way back up. You are seeing the same pictures as us, of course, and the race radio makes all the pronouncements. That's not even at the scene either now. That's a head up the road as well. So meanwhile at the front, hard workers like Dave Zabriskie, centre left white. Well, the field is still chasing in large bunches. The referees have opened up the gap, Paul, what they call a barrage, which means they make voids in the race so that if riders catch up, they do have to do so at their own volition. Makes for a very tough moment now. Look in the distance, no cars. They're making the riders cross the gaps on their own.
Well, I did hear, Phil, I've got a large complement of riders in this group. One of them is HTC High Road. I don't think any of their riders was caught up behind that group. Also, Team Leopard Trek, Andy Schleck, despite the fact that people are criticising him for losing time on the Mur de Bretagne and the fact that he's maybe not shown that much form this season, he's at the front. He hasn't had any bad luck at all so far in the Tour de France, and he's kept himself ahead of all of the accidents and incidents.
Yes, today on an innocent flat stage to Châtellerault that's reserved for the domain of the sprinters has actually had an effect on the overall standings of the race now, because Bradley Wiggins was up in 6th place overall, only a hatful of seconds away from the race lead, and tomorrow might have been his day.
Well, we're getting information that Chris Horner, involved in that accident, is about 5 minutes behind the leaders of the race and about 3 minutes behind the group that he was with Philippe Gilbert and Thor Hushovd, so that will be a hard ride for him to come back. In fact, I wouldn't think he will, Phil, at 30 kilometres to go.
Not now the speed has picked up, because we're 4 kilometres away from that the mock finish, if you like, the race for the green jersey, which is for the first 15 riders to cross that point at 25.5 kilometres out. Points for that green jersey. But talking of the green jersey, I haven't noticed where the green jersey is right now, but I'm pretty sure that Philippe Gilbert is safely in that lead group.
Well, I have a feeling the race computer here telling me that both Hushovd and Gilbert are in that peloton at a minute and 51 seconds.
Yeah.
But this is the chaos that happens after a crash. All these riders battling to get themselves back to in contention with the field. Number 23 there, Egoy Martinez, 47, trying to get in there. Luis Leon Sanchez. He's a man who is expected to help Robert Hessink, who strangely enough managed to avoid the crash on this occasion.
So points up for grabs here. None of these boys feature in the green jersey competition. There's just a prize of around 1,500 euros for the first man over the line. As continually, this is Sylvain Chavanel. He's been in his wars for 2 days, but he's now rejoined the pack there. Good chase by the French champion.
Courageous chase by the French champion. He's been battling over the last couple of days to stay in contact with the Tour de France. It's one final kilometre now for the four leaders. I have to say, Phil, it's a sad thing to say. It's not really important, the position of these guys crossing the line. They probably don't even have any points in the competition at all. But the first man to cross the line from the main field will get themselves 11 points. Mark Cavendish is in 5th place overall. He wants to try and close the gap on the guys in front of him. Gilbert and Rojas separated by a single point, 144 to 143.
And they're going to chase for that very valuable 5th place finish. I'm sure of that. Oh boy, the tactics are out the window now. There is so much chaos going on behind the Tour de France. These four boys are better out of it just now, and they're still holding on to a good lead as they're going into the last 25 kilometres. Half a kilometre to the sprint, and then half a kilometre after that they will see those 25 kilometres to go. They're looking over the shoulder, wondering why they weren't caught, because they thought they were about to be, and they've opened up the gap again.
133 at the back is Michael Delage, the man doing the pacemaking. On the front there is Gianni Meersman, the Belgian rider on Team FDJ. In 2nd position, Yannick Talbourdon. But there is, when you're in a breakaway like this, Phil, a little bit of a question of pride. You want to be the first man to get across the finishing line at the intermediate time sprint.
Well, here's Michael Delage. He's just valuing the teamwork. In fact, he's going to take it off his teammates. So Delage gets the maximum points there in Buzançais, ahead of Meersman, and he gets his 1,500 euros for that, while the second man gets 1,000. So between them, they picked up 2,500 euro there. It's about $3,300 and about 2,000 for £300.
Well, now they're over the front. 1, 2, 3, 4 riders leading out Mark Cavendish in 5th place. Rojas is right on his wheel, coming up the outside in the green jersey. Philippe Gilbert is going to barge and bounce a little bit. He wants to try and get himself onto the wheel of Mark Cavendish. Don't do that too often, Philippe, because these boys are much more experimented sprinters than you might be.
Well, just take a look as the missile warms up for the finish, perhaps, because he knows his arch rival Tyler Farrell is not in this group. He's looking, so he's sprinting on one leg, Mark Cavendish, as he comes up towards the line here. No, sir, it's not Mark. That's why. This is Mark Cavendish. As he comes up towards the line, he takes it. Rojas is there, and he gets, I think, he might have claimed the green jersey there, Paul, because I think that Gilbert finished 2 places behind him.
Well, and all now dies down for the sprint, Phil. Yes, there you can see Mark Renshaw, the lead-out man for Cavendish. Cavendish looking at the finish, the line down the middle, straight sprint for him. He's not really trying here, Phil. I don't think he pushed himself too hard, and that's why he came out of the pack on this occasion to get himself those points. 11 points in the bag, and yes, 2 positions separating Rojas from Gilbert. It's a question of the finish line now, because Rojas has jumped over Gilbert in that standing.
So the 1-point deficit, now the 1-point advantage for Rojas, and he'll look to try and build on that at the finishing line and get his jersey back, which he's loaned to Philippe Gilbert. As they continue to trickle onto the back, there's an awful lot of riders are still behind the race who will not get back, and I'm afraid to say that Tyler Farrell might be one of those riders. He was around at a while. This is the next group on the road here, so let's just pan there around and see if we can find the face of Tyler Farrell. I don't think Tyler Farrell is there at the moment. It's a big bunch going through. He might be in this group, but if he is, then he's got a chance of rejoining before the finish. Whether he's wasted a lot of energy, he's certainly stiff with his right thigh.
But the problem is, Phil, if you look at this group, they've almost given up here. They're guys who are, their spirit has been broken because of that crash. And if they don't make the contact in the next 5 or 6 kilometres, then it's all over bar the shouting. He's pretty lucky, though, I have to say, Tyler Farrar, to have in there his teammate, the man who really has to be, for me, man of the match for Team Garmin-Cervelo, because Raimunas Nevadauskas is the man who's setting the tempo for him.
He's setting the tempo. He's trying to drag that group back into the race to put Farrar in with the sprint again. You see a lot of following cars there now, and that is a good sign. There is a lot of daylight between this bunch and the Geraint Thomas, Levi Leipheimer bunch. These boys are kicking all the way to the finish today. They're trying, and if at first you don't succeed. 13.2 kilometres to go. The gap is nothing, and this time I think they're saying enough is enough.
I think the gap this time, Phil, is twice nothing, which is 0. But still, Gianni Meersman feels there is that little possibility of an escape. He will not give up. That's a Belgian for you. He wants to fight all the way down to the line.
Well, he's on television around the world, and why not? He's had another go, but those other three have decided that is it here. Bit of a dangerous, sharp right-hand turn, well barriered off as the bunch has to squeeze in a little bit. Looking at the clock, it's 1:41 now, back to the group containing Geraint Thomas and Boyson Hagen, who won yesterday. How the race turns around in such a short time. The peloton has got quite big. Some riders did get back, but those who were injured lost a lot of time, and a lot of the Sky boys had to wait for Bradley Wiggins, and it took about 4 minutes before it was decided he couldn't continue, so they lost their position in the peloton. That's really, really sad. It's been a terrible day for Sky today. They're going to have to work really hard to come back from this.
Now continue to set the tempo, and what firepower they've still got left in that group, because when you look at the men up alongside him, you've got Lars Bak is still there, Bernie Eisel, Danny Pate, Peter Velits is riding very close, and these is the that's a big gap.
Well, look at the rock and rolling of the road here. You don't even notice those little hills. They hurt the legs, and there is the gap now. We're looking back 1:41 to that chase group as we go under now with the group here. 10 kilometres to go to the finish.
I think Jonathan Waters right now, he has to go to his young man and say to Nevadauskas, just stop chasing now, because the guys who want to win this race and Levi Leipheimer need to pace.
10 kilometres to go as we look at this roller coaster approach to the banner, and then we pull back to 1:41 behind. This is a massive bunch containing the majority of the Sky team who waited for Bradley Wiggins and then were told to resume racing. It includes Geraint Thomas and Boyson Hagen, who won yesterday. It also includes the American Leipheimer, who again late on the day has been involved in a crash and will lose more time because the computer, I don't think it's stuck, but it's not giving us any increase at all here.
Well, you can see the panic, the scrambling to try and get themselves into the race. All of these riders, 25 kilometres to go, did not expect to get stopped at the side of the road, did not expect to have to fight back into the Tour de France this afternoon. I'm looking down that line of riders to see if I can spot Geraint Thomas. This is controlled. This is probably one of the best drilled squads in the world. It's HTC High Road, the team of Mark Cavendish, the team of Matty Goss from Tasmania. Matty Goss riding there just over on the right-hand side, peeping through every now and again. Hidden behind him, away from the wind of this race, is Mark Cavendish, looking and dreaming of win number 17 at stages at the Tour de France.
Second race coming in about 2 minutes and 17 seconds. That's an 80-strong peloton as well, containing the majority, if not all, of the Sky team left riding as they make their way through the streets here now. The last 1.6, it is flat, it is very gently uphill, and it's going to make the riders feel they're in the ocean because it's a very wide road.
Well, Peter Velits has done his job. He's got nothing left in the gas tank now. He swings off, but there are still 6 riders from HTC High Road at the front. Number 6 in the line will beat Mark Cavendish. Cavendish's wheel is covered at the back by Alessandro Patacchi. Just behind Patacchi, Jose Joaquim Rojas. But the boys have still got plenty of firepower. Velits hasn't gone to the backfield. He did a big turn at the front and he swung in to get behind the wheel of Bernie Eisel. They want the firepower with them for as long as possible. Renshaw is just in front of Cavendish. In front of Renshaw is Goss. And then Bernie Eisel today said, I'm going to do the long one at the front today, boys.
I think we are seeing the perfect lead-out train in operation at the moment. Mark Cavendish is the last man in white in the long straight line. Just in front is the rider from Bathurst in New South Wales. That is Mark Renshaw. Everybody says he's the fastest man and he could win for himself, but he loves to lead out, Mark. That's his job. Watch the location of the green jersey of Philippe Gilbert and the yellow jersey of Thor Hushovd. When we finished here in 2008 and Mark Cavendish won, Thor Hushovd was the next best of the riders who are competing in the race today. He finished in 4th.
Bernie Eisel on the front, in front of Peter Velits, then right up there as well. Still in reserve, hasn't really turned the gas tank on yet. Tony Martin, they're now, Phil, inside of 2 kilometres. There's only one corner left. It's a right-hand sweeping bend, and then it's 1.5 kilometres, straight line down to the finish here in Châteauroux.
Huge effort by Bernie to make sure nobody could move up the peloton there, but he's sold his engine and he's dropped to the back. This is the sweeper. Now they will actually soon see the finishing line if they've got great eyesight. It's a mile in front of them, but once they get under that 1 kilometre to go, it is dead visible in a long straight line. Look at the width of this road.
Look at Tony Martin.
Perfect lead out by Team HTC High Road. The last man is Mark Renshaw. When he swings off, Greipel has already made his move to the line, but nobody could match the acceleration of Mark Cavendish. 17th stage win in the Tour de France.
We want to show you the highlight here. We'll split the screen after we show you the sprint to the finish. Mark Cavendish, his 17th Tour de France stage win, but it's in the same location that he won his first back in 2008, and he remembered it. He celebrated in the exact same style.
I think Mark Cavendish must have a photographic memory. He remembers everything, especially his wins. Great moment for HTC High Road and Mark Cavendish.
Thor Hushovd is still the man in yellow. He is the only man to finish in the top 10 of each and every stage of this year's Tour de France, but his run in yellow could soon come to an end. Here are the Michelob Ultra standings after 7 stages. Thor up top, Cadel Evans in excellent position, just a second back. Frank Schleck in 3rd, and there is Cloden of Team Radio Shack in 5th.
Cloden looking strong, just 10 seconds down. Andy Schleck in 7th overall. Tony Martin in 8th, and Robert Hasing from the Rabobank squad in 10th, 20 seconds behind Thor Hushovd.
Yes, here in the beauty of the Auvergne now, deep in the heart of France, there could be day one in the battle of the favourites. Time can be won and lost on the finish today as they head up towards the climb of Superbès. Earlier today, this is the rollout this morning in Issoire, in Auguron, Nigel. I'm running a day ahead of myself today. This is Auguron this morning. Lovely crowd here to say farewell to the riders, and we saw the French Air Force there with the tricolor trail of smoke behind them going overhead. The start of the 189 kilometres given as always, and one would say as always, an immediate attack.
Well, everybody, I think, is getting the same orders from team management. Go out, get into the breakaway as early as possible. But when you get a breakaway like this form, Phil, of 9 riders, that starts to look just a little bit precarious.
But in that breakaway, TJ Van Garderen of HTC High Road, and we'll catch up with this breakaway very shortly because they are still clear. At Evian-les-Bains, we had a small sprint for the King of the Mountains, and then it was followed by the big sprint of the day at Auxances, with still 106 kilometres to go. It was very early on this. It was Christophe Riblon in the breakaway who went clear for maximum points for the green jersey, although he's not in that competition until now. The anticipated sprint was for 10th place from the peloton, and it was the champion of Belgium, Philippe Gilbert, with a lead out, challenged by Rojas, but Rojas could not reach him. And Philippe Gilbert gets 1 point more than the green jersey leader, Rojas of Spain. And he wasn't too happy with this. He was led out by his teammate as well, Ventoso, but just watch his reaction.
I think a little bit surprised by the power of Philippe Gilbert. That wasn't really a fast sprint. It was slightly uphill, and I think, Phil, it caught out 1 or 2 of the sprinters when they went over the top. But for Rojas, he's got to keep chipping away at this competition.
Beaten in a sprint by Philippe Gilbert, who's actually made it quite clear he wants to win that green jersey. Will he win today? It's a typical finish for him, some would say. The breakaway settling down now as we look at the weather here. Not very good, I have to say. Chilly today, 55 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind is slight at the moment at 5 miles per hour coming out of the west now. We had a directional change there. And as always, the pictures available in high definition, and we'll see some beautiful pictures today despite the weather, because we're going into this volcanic region of Clermont-Ferrand. It's not too far away from the race course today. 189 riders left now. This morning, of course, not starting was Chris Horner. 14 teams intact of the 22 and 198 at the original start in the Vendée. We've done 742 miles of the 2,131. So you're now up to date as we join the live pictures down there at the peloton. I can tell you the race is absolutely flying today. It's running 12 minutes ahead of the fastest calculated time for it. So they haven't wasted any time on facing a rendezvous down at the end of the stage, because we had climbed the Col de la Croix Saint-Robert with 25 kilometers left, and it's a hilly finish as well. After that points competition, there's the standing. Now Gilbert's closed in by 1 point. He's now exactly 10 behind Jose Rojas of Spain.
And Mark Cavendish up there in third place. We've seen a changing of the guard, Phil, at the front end of the main peloton this afternoon, because obviously over the first week of this race, it's been all about Garmin Cervelo. They've protected the lead of Thor Hushovd. I think they realise they're going to relinquish that lead at the end of the day. And we've also seen the teams of the sprinters, for example, HTC High Road, doing a lot of pacemaking in the event today. They probably feel that it's time for them to take a backseat, but they have managed to put one of their younger riders, 22-year-old TJ Van Garderen, into this breakaway group of 9 riders who are currently over 5 minutes clear of the pack.
And the road's pretty slick just here. The rain is, the riders are still a long way away from where we're sat commentating on the top at Superbès. You can see by the wet roads there that it is pretty wet. They're going to go in and out of quite cold showers today. As you see, they're now out of the valleys. They're starting to climb. The region here gets a very hard winter, lots of snow around. There's plenty of ski slopes and ski runs here. But as they head towards picking up that knife and fork for the feeding station call, we're getting up into higher territory now.
Well, once they go through the feeding station, Phil, it really is up, up and up again. And the last 30 kilometres are 18 miles with that second category climb in there, the Col de la Croix de Saint-Robert. It is very difficult, and it's almost just a very quick descent and then climbing right up to the summit finish in Superbès. I think there's going to be a bit of a sort out this afternoon, but maybe not a massive attack between the overall contenders, but certainly Alberto Contador is the man to come out and play.
Well, 9 riders in the breakaway. Rui Costa from Movistar, Christophe Riblan, AG2R, Xavier Zandio from the Sky team, who lost their leader yesterday, Bradley Wiggins, and Adi Engels, the man that dropped off to help Tom Boonen a couple of days ago, Quick-Step, Julian Elfares of Cofidis, Romain Zangler of the Cofidis team. TJ Van Garderen has made it his first Tour de France, and now he's in his first breakaway. Cyril Gauthier of the Europcar team, and Alex Kolobnev, the former champion of Russia for Katusha. That's the breakaway. This is Adi Engels out in front at the moment. It'll be interesting to see, you know, because this sort of course, Paul, and the speed these boys are going, we're looking at a nice lead at the moment, about 5 minutes 20. TJ Van Garderen, if we could get this group to the finishing line on the climbs, I think he'd win the stage.
Well, he's definitely be looking for it. He's lost a fair amount of time so far since the start of this year's tour. He's lost over 8 minutes. There's no riders really dangerous in the overall standings. Rui Costa is at 4 minutes. Gauthier is at 4 minutes. And just looking a quick look there, Phil, at the Mona Lisa. And obviously the Mona Lisa of the lettuce and cauliflower from this part of the world.
Yes, I wonder where that painting had gone. It's obviously up on the Superbès hillside there. Well, the race is now underway. The Americans have a big interest in the breakaway today. It's the sort of course which could have a breakaway succeed today. This is not, dare I say it, a routine day in the Tour de France, because there is a group up front and there's hills to come. We'll take a break. Cadel was second because they later disqualified Ricardo Rico, the winner here, for drugs, and so he moved up 1 place, of course. I wonder if he realises that, Cadel Evans. Anyway, he's riding extremely well in this tour, no doubt about that. As we look out across to the Puy de Dôme in the massive volcanic area around Clermont-Ferrand today, the riders are actually racing through an area from Aiguillon to Superbès and in the Auvergne, and a breakaway going early. And Paul, there's no consolation for what happened to Bradley Wiggins yesterday, but at least they've got a man in the breakaway today in the former Xavier Zandio. The Sky boys have got to rethink the whole tour strategy.
They had to rewrite all of their tactics, Phil, because, you know, they came to the Tour de France for one man and one goal only, and that was to get Bradley Wiggins onto the podium, which is why the whole team stopped at the side of the road yesterday to try and encourage him back into the race. But with a broken collarbone, there was absolutely nothing that he could do.
I think they were wrong to stop the two men in Boysenhagen and in the white jersey of Geraint Thomas, because they took them out of the top 10 at the same time. But they chose to do that, even though there were an awful lot of riders left there who would have chased back anyway. But hindsight, the fact is that Paul Bradley is out, and that is an absolute sporting tragedy for us all, because we all felt that this was Bradley Wiggins' year. He had terrific form, and there is actually an air of mourning around the Tour de France. All the English speakers are all saying how sorry they are to see Bradley go, and we all second that, of course. But the race goes on, and this breakaway settling down today very early on. It's a big break. It's the biggest we've had. 9 riders in it, some good riders in this breakaway too, and I think we're set today to see 2 fights. The in-fight for the next wearer of the yellow jersey, that probably won't really get underway until we're in the last 30 kilometers of the day, when the road is extremely difficult and narrow in places. And this breakaway, if they can keep this sort of an advantage, have got a chance of somebody staying away to the finish.
Well, that's what they're hoping for. Everybody figured that after the breakaways that were caught on the flatter lands, the next couple of days would be the day when the breakaway will succeed on one day or another. I am actually not convinced, Phil, that the breakaway will survive today. I think the breakaway will go tomorrow, and that's the one that everybody will be looking to try and get into. At the back of the pack, just having stopped for a natural break, number 171, the winner of yesterday's stage, Mark Cavendish.
Yes, Mark Cavendish didn't get involved in the sprint, by the way, earlier on, which came because the riders were running some 12 minutes ahead of their fastest time. The sprint was on before we were on television today, and Cav didn't bother with it anyway. That's long ago. They went through it very early on, and the breakaway again going from the gun. Immediately the flag pulled in by the organisation.
And Cyril Gauthier is the rider in the green jersey, just swinging off from Europcar. I'd expected to see a move coming from Thomas Voeckler on a day like today, because he's the man that will certainly, over the next couple of stages, Phil, be looking for a long breakaway like this.
Well, why not? It is an opportunist breakaway because there's such a few seconds. Evans is only a second behind Hushovd overall. Frank Schleck, who was 4th in this race last time we came up this place, is 4 seconds off the lead. David Miller of Great Britain sits in 4th place. He's only 8 seconds off, and Miller is a real candidate here to carry on the fairy tale opening week of the Tour for his team Garmin Cervelo, because it's just the sort of move. If Miller's anywhere near the front when they're climbing to the finishing line, it wouldn't be too difficult for that man to grab 8 seconds. He's riding so well. Yeah,
we're actually only talking about seconds one way or the other. Yeah. In fact, the first 10 riders are only separated by 20 seconds. And yes, I think Miller has got it in his mind to try and get something.
Well, look at this here as we sprint for the King of the Mountains. Kolobnev takes it right on the line easily. All that effort for 1 point, but 1 point is 1 point. He's now on the table in the King of the Mountains competition. Little smile on his face there. Former champion of Russia.
Well, watch out tomorrow for the big long breakaway to go clear, because there's a lot of high categorized climbs on the race route in the morning, and that's the day I think somebody would go out to try and lay down the foundations for a possible overall win in the King of the Mountains classification. Up until now, it's just been a little bit of jousting.
Yes, these next 2 days we'll be racing to see who keeps the yellow jersey on his bedpost on the rest day on Monday. Mondale squad. Not too sure which. I think it was Christian Koran who it was there.
Just a quick glimpse of the Russian national champion at the back there, Pavel Brut. And it's the first time he's won that title. And you might just have noticed over the top of the horizon there, 1 or 2 of the Puys. We're really heading right into the heart of the Puys, and those are extinct or dormant volcanoes.
Yes, and let's hope they stay that way for the next couple of hours as well, as they now continue to race at the front. Let's pop back in with our car cam into the team car of Radio Shack with Johan Brunel. Let's see what they head towards the low slopes of the climb of the Saint-Robert, which is the big high spot of the day. The top is even higher than Superbest, which of course, as always, is where we are commentating from, the finish line. The work all being done by Alexander Vinokurov's Astana team. He's made no secret of the fact he wants to win the stage today, and he's going to try to go to the mountain, to the finish, in the best possible position. 2:27, they're just slicing into the lead of those 9 riders at the moment. And the back of the peloton, believe me, is having trouble hanging on. These are the 9 escapees out front for most of the race today. in a total 150 kilometers they've been out front so far, just short of 100 miles in the lead. You can see the stunning scenery here. The road surface, I don't know whether they've done all the roads, especially for the Tour de France, but they are magnificent here. They've all been resurfaced, relined, and the Tour coming into the center of a beautiful area here, just a bit further down now than Clermont-Ferrand and the giant Puy de Dôme, where we once witnessed an outstanding battle in the 60s between Jacques Anquetil and Raymond Poulidor, the two great Frenchmen. Raymond Poulidor is on the race, by the way, still. Sadly, Jacques is no longer with us. And we continue down to the edges of the village here of La Bouboule for the peloton, going past the church of Saint-Maurice here. And the town hall is also just down there, as the riders won't see any of this, of course, so they're just concentrating on holding that wheel in front of them as they do through the S's here at high speed. And Omega Pharma Lotto are back in it now. So Omega Pharma Lotto, I think they've got an interest and a confidence in Philippe Gilbert, this diverse rider who can do pretty much everything. Let me just remind you for the last time about the IZOD race for the podium sweepstakes. You log on to NBCSports.com/podium. Do it every day. A chance to come and see us on the Tour de France next year. A Cervelo S5 bike, a Giro helmet, a clean bottle, all at stake. Today's code word is Cervelo, which you need to log on.
Tough just actually riding in the field. You know, when the Tour de France came to Superbest, Phil, back in 2008, there were 3 riders who are still in the field today who actually finished inside of the top 5. Cadel Evans was 2nd, Frank Schleck 3rd, and the man we just saw getting dropped, Roman Kreuziger, he was in 5th place.
Well, the riders are riding in front of a massive crowd here as we go through Le Mont Doré, I think the name of this town is. It's a ski resort as well, a winter sports resort. I think the whole crowd has turned out. That's the sign they're looking for. Oh, that's the sign they wish they didn't see in some cases. The summit of the climb starts here, and it is 6.2 kilometers away. It's 6.2k the climb. It takes up to 1,451 meters.
Yeah, it's the first serious climb of the Tour, the first time we get a chance to see who has got good climbing legs in the 2011 Tour. These riders, they will battle it out once we get to the steeper part of the climb. We're coming towards the end of the race, and there's the first move, the first acceleration coming, and it's from TJ Van Garderen.
Well, energy, this is the way we thought he would go, indeed, because we feel that he could win the stage if he can get away from this group. We knew he would attack it. Maybe this is the one they decided, because the race behind has started to close in rather quickly. He's completely split up this 9-man group, and slipping straight off the back now is Romain Zangler. From the Cofidis squad, he couldn't answer that one. TJ Van Garderen has launched a move. He's got about 5 or 6 riders with him.
Well, 22 years of age. The gradient at the moment, this is probably the steeper part of the climb at 7.5% the gradient, but that was a fine acceleration. It will get a little steeper now as we start to turn left onto the real start of the climb proper. We're looking at TJ Van Garderen in 2nd position now, Phil. He was the man who started the aggression. He's been looking to open up his winning account so far in the international sport this year, but he did finish 5th overall in the Amgen Tour of California.
Well, at the moment he's got 6 riders with him. They've got rid of Adi Engels there. I think also Zangler went as well, and somebody else has gone too, but this is the head of the field now, and Astana have taken over. They've just passed that same sign of 6.2 kilometers, and this is where I think we'll see them lift the pace. Well, it's tough. Xavier Zandio is the rider in the middle trying to hang on. Reblon has now been dropped off the back here, and all of the pace is being done by this 22-year-old American TJ Van Garderen. Now you will probably see why he is being tipped as a future possible winner of the Tour de France. Now, what's happened to Sandy Cassard? Flat tyre?
Well, I'm not sure. He's not panicking at all. He's at the side of the road. There's a move coming from Astana, really trying to whip up the pace here, and nobody's responded at all in that group.
Well, this is not Vinokurov. It was making the early move here at all. And this could be a decoy, in fact, for a later attack coming from Alexander Vinokurov. It's a good move if that's what the plan is.
Well, there's a lot of Leopard Trek riders near the front end, and they will be starting to look after the position and placing of Andy and Frank Schleck. And now it looks as if somebody's gone straight over the top of TJ Van Garderen. And this now acceleration is coming from Rui Costa of Movistar.
I think the rider who just attacked was Thomas Vaitkus of Lithuania there, but we'll find out when we can get up to him now. We've got 5 kilometers to climb here. as Rui Costa starts to lift up the pace, but answering the pace, no problem at all. TJ Van Garderen, not quite so smooth for Cyril Gauthier in that green jersey, as we switch back to the lone attacker, which could well be Thomas Vakus as he tries to come through. He's getting clear, there's no immediate reaction, and this hill now is a real tough climb to the summit.
Well, there's no reaction coming at all from the main field. They're all watching each other. The white jersey there on the left-hand side, that's on the shoulders of the Rabobank rider, and that is Robert Hessink.
Yeah, Garderen. So as we look at the race here now, there's a counter move coming from the field. So we're now getting the two riders chasing the break. Just trying to work out who that rider is there from Euskaltel.
It's Amesh Chiruka who's gone off the front, and this is the first aggression. You see the big guys are waiting for the final couple of kilometers. Over on the right-hand side, the black and white jerseys, the two riders close together. The second rider there is Andy Schleck. Just behind him is his brother Frank Schleck. But they're all starting to queue up. Andreas Kloden is the rider from Radio Shack in about 10th position.
Well, the counter-attack has started. Tirolongo is being credited with that move at the moment, from Astana.
Well, this is the line of FDJ riders. There was obviously a mechanical problem there for Sandy Kassar. He has changed his bike, and this is a tough time to try and pace yourself back into the field, because a lot of riders are sitting up. They've got to wind their way around all of those riders who are getting left behind on the climb. It's a tough call for Sandy Kassar here.
Yes, he didn't really want to get dropped and lose time here just at the moment, and he's going to try and keep on racing through the riders who have just given up at the base of this climb and are riding now to the finish, which is still about 30 kilometers away, just on. Leopard Trek amassing at the front too, and look at this now. This is all or nothing for TJ Van Garderen today. The boys can't match his tempo, and he's driving on. This is a terrific show of strength and indeed of courage for TJ Van Garderen, riding against the best bike riders in the world in his first Tour de France. He is on the steepest climb so far. Rui Costa, look at his face, is fighting to get back up here alongside with Cyril Gauthier.
Well, this young man, Phil, when he was a youngster at 18 and 19 years of age, Van Garderen rode for the Dutch Rabobank team, the development team. He turned professional then for HTC High Road in 2010, finished second overall in the Tour of Turkey. He's still promising to be a great star of the future as he made that acceleration, but you've got to be a pretty good man to get away from guys like the Movistar rider Costa.
Well, take your hat off to Johnny Hoogeland here, who is wearing the King of the Mountains polka dot jersey. He's pushing on too. He has realized that the leaders are watching one another and not attacking. I think Fletcher is the Sky rider who's got up behind him. So Hoogeland is looking for the few points at the top while the others are just watching each other.
Well, a brave move by Johnny Hoogeland. He got his stripes for the King of the Mountains jersey out on a long breakaway, but this is the best way to try and defend it. But I'm still expecting to see something coming from the big names in the main field, guys like Andy Schleck, Frank Schleck, and maybe even Alberto Contador.
Now we're looking at Cyril Gauthier here, who's actually pushing on, as he really does grimace with the pain of the day, but he has been dropped, and these two riders push on now. And this, the Movistar rider is Rui Costa, and right in front and setting a tempo that now only one can follow is the 22-year-old TJ Van Garderen. He really is, because of the way the field is riding this, there is a real possibility now that he could cross the valley and get onto that final climb and be alone when he gets there.
The big advantage, Phil, is, as I said, he's not a threat in the overall standings, but he's an extremely good climber. Bear in mind, last year in the Dauphiné, he actually was third in the individual climb trial, finished third overall, but he was able to stay in contact with Jani Brakovic and Alberto Contador on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez.
Hoogeland carrying up Juan Antonio Fletcher, and it won't be that long before they pick up the teammate of Fletcher, Xavier Izandio, because those riders have been left by the breakaway, and this is going to be a little bit of impetus now for the leader in the King of the Mountains. There they are.
Well, that's Amesh Chiruka just in front of him there with Paolo Tirolongo and Pierre Roland of Team Europcar. The main field is still not putting in any kind of reaction at all, and they may well save it until the final climb of the day, and that bodes well for the American rider TJ Van Garderen. I have to call him an American rider because TJ Van Garderen sounds like a Dutch name.
Well, he comes from Dutch parentage, but he's very much born and bred in the USA, that's for sure. Meanwhile, still no reaction from the big boys in the Tour de France, and if one doesn't move, the rest won't. They're going to carry this race, if they can, all the way to the Pyrenees before they start having a showdown. This is all running in the favour of the adventurers today. This is the dropped group here.
Well, these are the sprinters. These are the men who, on the big mountain days like this, all they can think about doing is getting themselves to the finish. Fabian Cancellara, Stuart O'Grady, they've done the job of work in the early part of this race for their man, and of course those are the two Schleck brothers.
He's raced across the gap here to the two Cofidis riders, Zangler and El Faris.
Well, it's the first time we've had a second category climb in the Tour de France, Phil, and the first time we've got a chance to get some serious points and going over the top of a first category climb. In fact, this year with the new rules, there are only points for the first 4 riders. 5 points for first place, down to 1 point for fourth.
We're looking at the two leaders now, the survivors of the 9 riders. They've gone ahead and the time is climbing again. 2:29 now, back to the group containing the yellow jersey with a number of riders spread in between. 20 attacks have all come from this young American 22-year-old TJ Van Garderen. He lives in Lucca in Tuscany, but he comes from Bozeman in Montana, as the people there so often tell me. They're very proud of this man. 1 kilometre now to the summit. You can see the wind whipping across the Auvergne. There's the move we expected. It's come from Alexander Vinokourov, and now that might cause a reaction, because Vinokourov at the moment is only 32 seconds off the yellow jersey of Hushoff. So they've got to chase now.
They have to chase Alexander Vinokourov. He is a man for all seasons, and he's not scared at all of attacking from the second row. Look at them. They looked at him and said, oh, well, it hurts a little bit too much to go after that. But of course, the big reaction coming from Saxo Bank, that's the team of Alberto Contador.
Yes, now they're trying to close it down. We anticipated that move because of the teammates that he put on up front there to set the pace originally. It went a little bit pear-shaped once the climb started, but he's waited, and now he's launched, and he's going to have to push home any advantage on the way downhill. 2 minutes 19 at the moment from TJ Van Garderen up at the front, and this group here.
Well, Saxo Bank weren't able to bridge the gap there to Alexander Vinokourov, and so obviously now it's being left up to Anthony Charteau in that green jersey of Europcar. He's ridden the first part of the Tour de France, Phil, pretty much in the last 5 positions for the whole of the 700 miles that we've covered so far in the race, and now all of a sudden that we're getting into his terrain, the mountains, he's decided to go up to the front.
Well, here is Rui Costa, and he's now working as hard as he can with TJ Van Garderen. As they continue to push on, they know there will be a reaction, but they are coming up towards the summit of the climb, those two. And they both will score points in the King of the Mountains competition. This rider's on a runaway now, as he just blasts by Julien Elfares there from Cofidis, and continues on a mission here. He is an opportunist cyclist, but boy, this man can really power when he breaks away from the field. This is a serious move, not just to win the stage now, but to become the next leader of the Tour de France. Once he's 31 seconds ahead of Hushoff, he's in yellow.
He's also feeling in great form this season with a 3rd place finish in the Dauphiné. Having been the leader, he's a kilometre away from the summit. When you take the handbook of how to ride professional races, when you give it to Alexander Vinokourov, he rips it up and throws it away, because he rides with feeling. He rides on guts and instinct.
Well, he's 1:55 behind the leaders there, the placing of Vinokourov at the moment. So he's gone clear of the main field here. And look at that, TJ Van Garderen finished off what he started at the bottom, and that's take maximum points at the top of the Col de la Croix Saint-Robert.
Will get himself 5 points for going over the top of that climb, the first second category climb of the Tour de France this year. And Vinokourov, Phil, is picking these riders up one by one. He just caught and passed the 2 Cofidis riders who were in the breakaway, Romain Zingel and Julien Elfares, and he's disposed of them, and he's now just about to make contact with Ahmet Chiruka in the orange jersey and Juan Antonio Fletcher.
He's got himself in some rhythm here now. A double take there as they looked across, and that was Pierre. No, I've lost his name.
Roland.
Pierre Roland, who's just looking to see who's coming up. He might have worked it out, though.
But Vino's also got a teammate in this group now. That was the move. That's why Paulo Tiralonga jumped off the front end of the pack, and he's a great climber, yes.
Sitting on the wheel of Hoogerland, and it looks like the weather forecast might not be wrong after all, because they're racing into the black clouds ahead there. The Norwegian flag flies for Thor Hushoff and for Boysenhagen at the moment. This is the peloton. There's a little move coming up. No. I just thought Andy Schleck is dead centre, the tall man in black there, but he's just watching everybody. There's no effort coming from this field. We could have seen the winning move today by TJ.
That's Jürgen van den Broek over on the right-hand side. Behind him, it's Tony Martin. On the left-hand side, Alberto Contador looking quite comfortable out of the saddle, dancing on those pedals.
Well, they're continuing a fast tempo. all of the favourites are here in this group, the exception of Vinokourov, who has now gone clear of the field and is looking for the next move. He finished 16th overall last year in the Tour de France, but he has been as high as 5th overall and 3rd in 2003. So they're running at 1:39 behind TJ Van Garderen. That is still a big gap because TJ is not looking like a tired man out front.
Well, this is the damage and the survival in the Tour de France here this afternoon. These are the guys who were doing what they can to try and stay off the front end of the pack, and they're having a hard time. The main field, the gap is 2 minutes and 2 seconds officially.
And that's for the leaders of the peloton. Now, as we look at the peloton, the two leaders are speeding down the other side of what we're told is a difficult descent, but it's BMC now trying to put matters to rights here. Cadel Evans sits there in the third wheel here. He wants Vinokourov back at least. A minute 55, 22 kilometres to go. The race is on fire now.
It certainly is, and you might just have noticed those flags on the left-hand side of the road. That's why BMC Racing have come to the front. What they want to do is put everybody into the gutter, and they want to see if on the descent they can actually split the field.
Well, this is the riders who have just tried to get it to organise. I think this group is off the back at the moment. It can't be. It must be off the front because Guessing is here.
No, it's Arrière de la Course. It's the back end of the race, and there you can see the peloton just in front of them. And Robert Hessing, I would presume, Phil, must have had some kind of mechanical problem up towards the top of the climb, because originally he was riding in the first 10 to 15 places. He
was right there. He must have had a problem. Whatever the problem was, he's got plenty of teammates who've dropped back with him here, but it's now he's going to have to take a few risks on the way down. But the peloton is really flying off this mountain. The road surface is very good. The bends at the moment look as though they're sweepers, and so the field is going to make good time. Now, as we watch these high-speed descents, watch how BMC, the American squad, take Cadel Evans around that corner. Cadel Evans crouched low in the third wheel as he comes off the bend. It is such a difficult situation, but they're coming down as a big peloton here. But this man from Montana is absolutely flying today, and TJ Van Garderen, don't worry about his overall. He's 8 minutes behind. He's racing for the stage win now, this rider, and it could be a big surprise result today. 3 minutes. American TJ Van Garderen in his first Tour de France, who's dictating affairs at the front of the race. Look at the grimace there on Paolo Tiralongo, because he's trying desperately to drag number 61, Alexander Vinokourov, up to the leaders. They are closing in. They're 50 seconds behind now. 4 leaders, in fact, because just joining Christophe Riblon and Cyril Gauthier have re-caught up with TJ Van Garderen and Rui Costa. So there's 4 men at the front. Now the roads undulate for a little while, but this road now is really, really difficult all the way to the finish. Johnny Hugeland here has surrendered to the chase behind. He's gone back in, so too there as Rolands. He's also gone back into the pack. BMC boys are keeping the pressure on here because they don't want Vinokourov to get that leader's yellow jersey. And at the same time, they're taking with them the current yellow jersey. He will be very happy, Saw Hoshop, with this reaction. Let's see if we've got any news from the team car of Radio Shack. Johan Brunel is the man in the mic, but surely reeling in those 4 front runners, and BMC are trying to keep their man Cadel Evans in the race just now.
Yes, the conductor of the orchestra, though, is in 3rd position. George Hincapie, he's dancing the tune, I think, for BMC Racing. One BMC Racing rider slipping backwards there because he's done a lot of pacemaking so far since the early part of the day with Brent Buchwalter, the American rider.
These riders all behind. The champion of France is there too, Sylvain Chavanel. They were going back to the leaders. Just look at these boys fly. They're all going gently downhill at the moment. Shortly it's going to kick up again. 16 kilometres, about 10 miles left to ride to the finish. A minute 35, the gap to the yellow. But remember, it's 47 seconds only now to Alexander Vinokourov's group. He is catching slowly but surely.
Well, Alexander Vinokourov has chosen this day as a day to quite possibly create a bit of a surprise in the Tour de France. We talked about Cadel Evans possibly inheriting the yellow jersey. We talked about the possibility of an attack coming from David Miller. But Alexander Vinokourov preempted all of that and went out with a very vicious attack.
Well, there he is. He's now taking charge himself at the front here, and Paolo Tiralongo has given his effort. He's about to be uncoupled at the back, and the 2 Sky Riders have been picked up now. Fletcher and Zandio. Zandio in the break all day. Fletcher the fresher legs, hard to say that, as he comes up alongside Alexander Vinokourov, who's never worn the yellow jersey in the Tour de France. His best year finished third in 03. The year of disgrace was 2007, disqualified for blood doping, and he lost 2 stages as a result of that. Trying to put matters to right now.
They are going absolutely ballistic around these corners. They are going so much faster than the peloton, which is still being led by BMC Racing. I think very shortly Alexander Vinokourov is going to make the junction.
Get the 15 kilometers to go. 15 kilometers to go for what would be an incredible result for TJ Van Garderen, if it's to be. It's far from certain at the moment, of course. Christophe Riblin has decided he's going on the attack. Well, they'll have to chase him down now, because these are the boys most likely to. They are now 46 seconds behind these 4 riders, and it looks as though Rui Costa, of the Portuguese rider on Movistar, is not going to allow this attack to go. Well, TJ certainly isn't. He's after him as he picks up Rui Costa, and Cyril Gauthier, as we tip a little bit downhill, has found his legs again. It seemed a good place to attack, but it may be a little bit unlucky that we've started to descend, because the boys have rammed in the highest gears and they've chased down Christophe Riblin. Well, a brave move by Riblin, but it's been countered by TJ Van Garderen, this youngster of 22 years of age in his first Tour de France. He is on fire at the moment. Meanwhile, what's happening back here, as we're starting to see Jens Voigt go back. He must have done a little bit of work to be seeing him dropped here.
Yeah, everyone's been working for their leaders. Jens Voigt was working for Frank and Andy Schleck, and they're comfortably in the front end of the main pack, which is red and black with the colours of Cadel Evans' BMC Racing Squad. Thor Hushovd is there, not too far behind him is in the blue helmet. There is Christian van der Velde, recovered from his crash in the early part of the Tour, and never very far away from the front, Alberto Contador.
We are just over, or just under 12 kilometers to go. Everybody and the surviving 4 leaders are hitting out at each other. At the moment, we've got Christophe Riblin just launched an attack. These 4, though, are far from done. But the chase behind is dramatic, because at 30 seconds now, moments ago it was 27, they started to pull away on this moment from Alexander Vinokourov.
In about a minute and a quarter, you've got the main field with Thor Hushovd, Rojas, and all of the main contenders of the Tour. This is the second group on the road. This is Alexander Vinokourov. His teammate is there, Paulo Tirolongo, and the Sky rider Juan Antonio Fletcher. On the straightaways, Phil, they can just about see those 4 riders in front, but they can't close down the final 30 seconds.
And as you can see, the roads are damp now. They're going to be a little bit cautious on the way down. We've not got a lot of descending left before we start the climb up to the finish. They'll climb up to the finish. Really, the last 10 kilometers of the day will be uphill, and we're not far away from that now as we race into the town of Best Saint Anastase. These are the leaders again, and they continue to move and split each other up, but they are holding their advantage because of these attacks just now.
Christophe Riblin taking this as a big risk going around the corner. He wants to try and ride away alone. Going around very closely to him is TJ Van Garderen. Good bike handling as well, because he closed down that little bit of that gap in the corner.
Well, all of these roads have been recently resurfaced with a very smooth tarmac macadam here, and as you can see, they're getting wet. So they've got to be careful on these bends. Regrouping again, Riblin deciding that one wasn't going to work. The tenacious 3 others are back up with him. And here we go again. Now it's Rui Costa has gone. They don't want to help each other. And TJ now knows what it's like to be in the Tour de France, because Van Garderen is being hit from all sides. I think they've realised the quality of this man on the climbs.
Yeah, but they're making a mistake here, Phil, by attacking each other one at a time. Yes, it takes up the speed for a short while, but then when they all come back together, they slow down. So what it does is have an effect of bringing down their overall average speed. And they'll start to see, if they mess around like this for another couple more kilometres, the main field will start to close down that gap.
10 kilometres to go to the finish now, just over 6 miles to the end. TJ Van Garderen is guarding his strength just at the moment. Cyril Gauthier is giving everything. He's been off the back, he's got back, he's attacked, and now it's Riblin who's gone off the front again, forcing the reaction from Rui Costa, the Portuguese rider, and followed by TJ Van Garderen, and then Gauthier again is finding the strength to grit his teeth and get on. And there's 10 kilometres to go for the 3 chasers. just looking at those three chases now, the time officially is 33 seconds coming in as he goes under that 10-kilometre banner. Another attack again by TJ. He's getting a bit fed up of all these boys throwing everything at him, so he's going to give them a dose of their own medicine here. TJ Van Garderen, his shoulders crouched over the handlebars. His first Tour de France, living up to the reputation he brought with him to this race, that's for sure. And meanwhile, more or less the start is right here in the town of Besse-Saint-Anastase, as the riders are being pushed all the way now by TJ. Christophe Riblin, who has tried to attack and get clear of this four-man group, has now been dropped again. It looks as though Costa is in trouble as well. TJ, surprisingly, is finding it difficult to keep up with Cyril Gauthier, the man I thought was the weakest of the four riders. Three together. We only have 5.7 kilometers to go. These four are going onto the slopes a minute over the yellow jersey, and this looks like Costa has gone first of all. The gap is only 28 seconds back to Vinokourov. Now TJ Van Garderen is going to have to dig deep here to hold on to the Portuguese.
It's a very steep part of the climb now. When he takes this right-hand bend, it flattens out for a fraction, and he'll try and get himself onto the tail wheel of the man from Portugal, Rui Costa. Left-hand turn now, it starts to kick up once again, but they're getting to the easier part of this climb. They've left most of the hard climbing behind them. Van Garderen now is going to have to do something very special. 22 years of age in your first Tour de France. This is a great place to be. He's actually now starting to dream and think about his first stage victory in the Tour de France and his first victory since turning professional last year.
He's going to have to worry at 22 seconds back of these two. He's coming, Alexander Vinokourov, still in the company of Juan Antonio Fletcher and his teammate Paulo Tiralongo. Looks as though Rui has saved the best to the last. This is the chase here. He's now round that same left-hand bend as Vinokourov is trying now. They've got rid of Paulo Tiralongo. He has dropped off the back. We only have two riders together now, and Juan Antonio Fletcher for the Sky team will soon have them in his sights. Van Garderen is having to work very hard here. Remember, he's going to ride into a headwind as they make the way up to the top of Superbest.
Well, just behind TJ Van Garderen there is a yellow neutral service vehicle, and just behind that yellow neutral service vehicle is Alexander Vinokourov and Juan Antonio Fletcher. Quick look over his shoulder there. He sees the banner over the road indicating 5 kilometers to go to the finish. He's got to really bury himself now, Phil. In a situation like this, you've got to turn yourself inside out.
Well, just 1 minute back to that same left-hand bend. Here's the front half of the peloton now. Riding, gripping that bottle with his teeth is Andy Schleck, twice a runner-up in the Tour de France. Many of these riders now are just wanting the race to end, but the battle is still very much alive. And remember, if anybody of the front two do win, then they've won from the start to the finish today. They've been in the lead of the race. Now Vinokourov is lifting it up again, but Fletcher's still got fight in those legs.
Well, you're looking there at two very experienced professional bike riders in the shape of Alexander Vinokourov and Juan Antonio Fletcher. But this man could create a bit of a surprise here this afternoon. Rui Costa looks over his shoulder. He knows he's got the gap, but now you've got to give it everything. You've got to push the pain barrier just a little bit further forward and try and keep in that depth.
Well, Rui Costa came here as winner of a small stage race in Spain in May, and so he's got good form. As he looked over his shoulder to see who was coming, this big pack is getting smaller and smaller, and I'm not too sure the yellow jersey is still there. Torhushoff, not apparent at the moment. We'll get a shot of it later on. But Cadel Evans is still there, and he's holding on to second place. And my goodness me, there is the yellow jersey of Torhushoff. He now has only got to worry the way he's climbing as to whether Vinokourov pulls out more than 31 seconds. At the moment, he's about 3 seconds to the good in yellow.
Well, the Alexander Vinokourov is now at around about 20 seconds from the leader, Rui Costa, and that's going to be extremely important, the gap between Alexander Vinokourov and the main field this afternoon. But Rui Costa, Phil, is doing a phenomenal job here. This is actually the flatter part of the climb in between the small town of Besse and the Superbest at the top where the ski resort actually starts. But once he gets out of town, all of a sudden he's got this massive, great big wall in front of him. It's about 1.5 kilometers, and I would say it's very close to being 10 or 12%.
So as the Portuguese rider tries to pull off what would be the finest victory of his career, he's only won 9 races since he turned pro in 2007. Alexander Vinokourov, though, has dropped everybody, including Fletcher now, and he's looking to go for everything or nothing. He's continuing to ride alone across the gap.
Well, he's a strong man, Alexander Vinokourov. He's looking for 23 seconds on the lone leader, Rui Costa, halfway across the gap and still trying to get himself back into this race, TJ Van Garderen. But Alexander Vinokourov is riding himself quite possibly into a yellow jersey at the end of the day. People would have expected that to be the story.
And the way that Thor Hushovd has fought yet again to retain yellow, I think I'll be rather sad if he loses it right now. 1 kilometre to go to the summit here of the climb. And this is for Rui Costa. By the way, he was suspended for a year last year for taking drugs, but he did prove the case that there was, in fact, the drug was in a food supplement. He proved his case, but even so, it was on the ban list, and he was suspended for a moderate 1 year. He's only just come back, and boy, he's found his legs. He's going well.
Well, Alexander Vinokourov has found his legs as well. It's a nasty day out there on the Tour de France with the rain coming down, really tetanizing the muscles of many of the riders. But Vinokourov himself is a solidly built rider, and he really seems to be able to battle the elements, especially on days like this. Onto the back wheel of Rui Costa, and if he just looked over to his right-hand side there, Phil, in the distance, he can actually see the finishing line and the finishing straight.
Yes, he can also see how it kicks up and climbs up to the finish. It's in that ridge right ahead of him right now, so it is not an easy finish. As we head up there, you can see the road right ahead of him now, and it's the empty road up to the line today at Superbès, where we are sat. It's not raining very heavily where we are. It's raining quite heavily, though, where Alexander Vinokourov is. There's the lone leader from Portugal, Rui Costa, the Movistar team. The team that's had so much serious ill luck this year with a serious injury to Juan Mauricio Soler, the Colombian on the squad, who crashed in the Tour of Switzerland, and the sad death of Xavier Tondo when he died when a garage door fell on his head before he went training. Unbelievable.
Well, Rui Costa now keeps looking over his shoulder. He's trying to judge the amount of effort that he has to put in to stay in front of this race. 1:05 is the official time gap back to Alexander Vinokourov, but 19 seconds is the distance between him and Rui Costa.
They're no longer giving us, so yes, they are. 65 seconds is the spread across the field. So at the moment, there's no doubt that Alexander Vinokourov has a yellow jersey waiting for him at the finishing line, but will he win the day as well?
Well, Phil, by my quick calculation as well, TJ Van Garderen, although he's been left behind by Alexander Vinokourov, should be getting onto the podium today because he will have the most points, I think, in the King of the Mountains classification.
And what a triumph that would be for the youngster from Montana. Well, it's all looking very, very good now for Rui Costa. I really thought that TJ had the master of this man on the previous climb, but it looks as though he saved the best till the last. He's 25 years of age, Costa, and there's the spread, and there's the crowd here now. Vinokourov trying to close that gap as they race man to man up towards the summit.
Well, Phil, you know, it just looks so close, doesn't it? It looks as if you can close that gap down very easily indeed, but he can't. It really is a lot of pressure. He's been chasing now for around about 15 kilometers, and he just cannot close down those last 10 or 15 seconds.
Now the pace is being picked up here as well, and I've seen Contador. He's about 4 rides obscured at the moment, but he is also trying to get things whipped up in that chase behind. Well, as we come up 1 kilometre to go, now can Alexander Vinokourov close that gap, as Rui Costa has been in the lead for 185 kilometres at the moment. But you know, I know the camera shortens it on the climb, but you know, Thor Hushovd could save his yellow jersey today. There is the pack, and they've really lifted the tempo now.
Well, what an unbelievable story, what an unbelievable battle here. Rui Costa just going under the Flamme Rouge, the red kite, 1,000 metres to go to the finish. Alexander Vinokourov is in the red zone, completely trying to find something special to try and nail down that last little gap, but also to try and conserve 31 seconds ahead of the main field and ahead of Cadel Evans.
I think Contador has got himself away from the front of the peloton here, so they're all going to react to this now. It's not Contador on the left of the road, it's one of his teammates who's tried to make a move.
That's Chris Anker Sorensen, the nodding style, and he's trying to set something up for Alberto Contador. Contador is there on the left-hand side, right on the wheel of Philippe Gilbert, and locked on his wheel is Andy Schleck, and locked in the main field is the yellow jersey, Thor Hushovd.
Well, Tor Hushovd is sat there, and they're slowly but surely hauling back Alexander Vinokurov. This race will remain split by seconds tonight as Philippe Gilbert tries to get something going. Contador has got into his slipstream. Andy Schleck will not allow Contador a bike length. He's right with him, along with Cadel Evans. You could be looking at the podium in the Tour de France in a week and a half right there.
Philippe Gilbert, Phil, is looking to get rid of all of the sprinters and try and get himself a few more points in the green jersey points classification. He's got Tony Martin now up alongside him. Alberto Contador, is he going to think of having a little move? Look how attentive Andy Schleck is as Alberto Contador accelerates, and you can see Cadel Evans is right there too.
This is the tester now. The top three names of previous tours are riding right in the shadow of the three-times champion. He's checked them both out. Also moving right up behind him is Jurgen van der Broek, and Gilbert says, I can do it just as well as you can, and Philippe Gilbert jumps clear now, grits his teeth. I don't think he can reach the leaders. It is just a little hill too far for him, but there is the acceleration of the champion of Belgium.
Well, it's a little bit like the finish at the top of the Kouwberg in the Amstel Gold Race, which he won in the month of April. Alberto Contador goes again, and Andy Schleck right on his wheel, followed by Cadel Evans. Tony Martin will see that line of riders and accelerate onto the back of it. And watch out, Phil, for Frank Schleck, because he's looking very comfortable about 5th or 6th position. Damiano Cunego.
Cunego has launched his attack now. The boys have tamed Contador, and they're not going to attack him, but everybody else is having digs now. Another acceleration has gone. Could have been Tony Martin who's gone. Cadel has now gone, and look at Contador's got to react to that. I'm not sure Contador is as sharp as he appears here. He's having to work very hard. Andy Schleck is happy to just follow.
It's all pretty psychological for the moment, Phil, as Rui Costa now is inside of the last 350 metres. I'm looking down through the haze of the exhaust of the motorbikes there to see whether or not he's going to survive. He's done it.
It's all over. He punches the sky. The Portuguese rider gets the victory today. They don't get many in the Tour de France. Rui Costa has done it, but the clock will stall, and Gilbert has got up for second place here, with the sprint very much on for third place, and Cadel Evans has still got the fight to get over the line in third place. Now, there won't be a time gap, and there won't be a change in the overall lead either, because Tor Hushovd, this incredible man, is still in yellow, and he's smiling. Gosh, I don't blame him.
You know, Phil, when we go into the mountains, you don't expect to see Tor Hushovd at the front end of the bike race, but today and this whole week, he's been on form, he's been on fire, and he stayed in contact. He really did a great job there this afternoon to stay at the top of the leaderboard at the Tour de France. Who knows what he's going to do tomorrow?
Well, absolutely superb bike racing, and the man who won was in the lead for the complete length of the stage, the only survivor of 9 men. That is an incredible performance, and he deserves everything he wins today. Rui Costa at just 24 years of age. He gets the victory for Movistar, which is a new team on the block, and it's been the unluckiest team and a sad team to be on all year. But now there's a happy moment for them.
Well, no, certainly. Let's have a look there. Philippe Gilbert came so close there to get himself into second place.
Well, let's have a look at the results. No, we can't land the helicopter. We're busy at the moment, and there is the results. Rui Costa getting the win in the lead for 4 hours and 36 minutes. Gilbert, a brilliant second place. Cadel Evans is third. Samuel Sanchez, we saw him in trouble earlier, came home in fourth. And it was Peter Velits that launched that late attack and got 5th place. Looking further down, Damiano Cunego, the first time we've mentioned his name, in 7th place. Contador 8th, and Andy Schleck is tailing him all of the way. All timed at 15 seconds, so there's no change in the overall lead now tonight. And Rigoberto Urán there, Ivan Basso, some big names. Well done, Christian van der Velde, also finishing in that leading group today. Well, we'll take a break, we'll come back, and we'll wrap it all up. What a wonderful day in the Tour de France today. A great win, well deserved, and the first breakaway to succeed in the Tour. The last survivor of 9 men led the whole day today. He looks as though he hasn't been on his bike now. He's had a nice wash behind and a change of clothes as well, and he salutes the crowd here. His first major win in his career. He's won smaller stage races, but he's never won anything quite like this. All the dignitaries here at Superbest. Interesting, Cadel Evans finishing third again today. That's exactly where he finished in 2008, the last time we came up this hill. He was promoted to second.
Jay, you did an incredible job of animating on the Col de la Croix Saint-Robert. Tell me, though, what was the feeling like on the last climb when, of course, things started to hurt?
Yeah, you pretty much summed it up. Just started to hurt. Yeah, I mean, it was just attacking, kind of just stop and go the whole time, and I don't know, it was just, I think a lot of people, they saw that I was aggressive on the first climb, so they knew that I was strong, so everyone was kind of looking to me to shut things down, so I had to take a lot of the responsibility, and then after a while it was like I just couldn't follow that last move, but yeah.
Touch on a little bit in your first Tour de France where your confidence comes from. We know you've had great results in other races, but people are often intimidated of the Grand Boucle, but you don't seem to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's the team's just not putting a whole lot of pressure on me. I mean, I need to work for the guys for the bunch sprints, and then, you know, but they're not saying you need to go for GC or you need to go for the white jersey. So like I can do my work and then lose time or whatever and save the legs. So it's like, it's a pretty stress-free tour for me. And, you know, they just said, get the experience, get the, you know, get the feel for what it's like. And so this one, I'm just trying to soak it up and even have a little fun doing it. So.
Well, congratulations on a powerful performance today.
Thanks.
Here he comes, and he's happy this time, believe me. The world champion is now back in yellow again on a day he thought he would lose it. Just like he did at the Muir-Britain, but Thor Hushovd is now, the maillot jaune continues for him, so does the fairy tale. This is now a week in yellow for this man. Just thinking of tomorrow, it's a tough day. There are 8 climbs on the road tomorrow, none of them super steep, but boy, from the gun tomorrow, they're up and down. Pretty hard day, to say the least. He won't even be thinking about that. Well, it's not the sunniest Tour de France yet, but it's certainly one of the most beautiful. Starting today from Issoire in the Puy de Dôme, we head here to Saint-Fleur, where the riders will end up the 129 miles today. There's the finish. It's dry at the moment. It could change at any minute. The field rolling away without Juan Manuel Garate, who was found to have a broken arm, so he couldn't start this morning. And at the official start, they're way by Christian Prudhomme. The ride is getting underway. As always, attack straight away. But they covered 45 kilometers in the opening hour of racing, and the attacks did not get away until right into the racing.
But everybody realizing this is a great day, an ideal day for a breakaway to form and to build up a big advantage. And as you said, Phil, after 40 kilometers, the breakaway did form.
There's the breakaway, which has formed in groups of 3. In the first attack was Voigtler, Fletcher, Sanchez came up, Terpstra came up, Sandy Cassar came up, Johnny Hoogland was in the original 3 and has got 1 point in the first climb of the day. Meanwhile, back in the peloton, it looks like 2 arch rivals on the road. On the right, Andy Schleck and Cadel Evans in the red, having a friendly chat before the battle begins today, as it surely will over this course. Weather is 70 degrees Fahrenheit, wind is light, forecast, they call them showers, I call them storms when they eventually come in, because they are very heavy indeed. We've had thunder this morning. These beautiful pictures are, as always, available in high definition as well. Now, as we go immediately live pictures, and well, we're starting at the top with number 1, because Alberto Contador has a problem now with his bike.
Well, this has just happened just moments ago. Over on the left-hand side, this man has having so much bad luck this year, Phil. It looked to me as if he crashed on his own on the left-hand side of the road, and he shouldn't have really been riding there. He took a little bit of time waiting for the team car to come up, get him a spare replacement machine. Now he's got to chase himself back into the pack. But I think Lady Luck has thrown everything she can, bad luck that is, at Alberto Contador this year.
But the Spaniard still fights back, and he's back on his bike again now. That's, as far as we know, is his 4th crash so far in this year's Tour de France. He's well at a change of bikes. Take another look here, just on the left there.
I'll tell you what happened there, Phil. He actually touched the wheel of a rider in front of him, and then he veered across it. It was obviously on the right-hand side of the rider, touched the wheel, tried to correct it, and then he veered off to the left and bumped into a spectator
when he crashed in there too. But anyway, he looks okay, but lonely road ahead of him here. What's happened to the Saxo Bank boy? Maybe they don't know he's fallen yet, because they expect them to come back for him. Lovely narrow twisting roads here in the department of the Puy de Dôme today, before we go into the Comtel for the big finish. And well, it's not often you see this, is it? The defending champion of the Tour de France behind the field, chasing back alone.
No, it's a big moment of, I think, concern for Team Saxo Bank, because Alberto Contador really is having an awful lot of bad luck in the Tour de France. The team haven't dropped back yet for him, but the team car is right up behind him. I wouldn't be surprised to see one or two riders of Saxo Bank very shortly stopping to try and pace him back into the main part of the peloton.
And at the moment, the 6 leaders are 3 minutes 5 seconds ahead of the main field, which contains the yellow jersey of Thor Hushovd. We've had crashes also today. David Miller has fallen, but as far as we know now has regrouped back in the main field. Mark Cavendish and some of the sprinters have had a nasty start today, that they were dropped, but I think they're back in the main peloton, as they now bridge the gap between the first climb of the day, the Côte de Massiac, and heading up to the second climb of the day, the Pas de Peyrolle, as we're watching at the moment. Just to give you a little bit more background as well, one of the riders out today with a crash and on his way to hospital is Ahmed Taruka. So the crash is happening early today as well. Well, Alberto Contador is going to have to rejoin as best he can. I'm a bit surprised that we're not seeing any teammates come back. They won't be long. Now, that was Bjarne Riis reaching out.
That was Mechanic, actually.
No, this is to Mechanic.
Same haircut.
Same haircut, absolutely right.
Now, you can see a rider from Saxo Bank just a little further up the road. He's just trying to figure out if he's got any injuries, abrasions. It was one of those silly little crashes that happens, but it was a mistake on his part, because of the way he fell, the way he veered to the left-hand side. To me, Phil, it was indication that he touched the wheel of the rider in front of him. Yeah, absolutely agree. Horrible feeling when you do that, because the bike seems to adhere itself to the wheel in front, and you can't get off it. Anyway, the car is in front of him, and that just like his racing cape has gone out of his back pocket now, but there's more things which are far more urgent than that just now. The tail of the convoy is just ahead. One rider is up there waiting for him. Well, he's just going to... He's back on his original bike, because he's got the number on there. You can just see just behind the seat. Yeah. And the Mechanic, I think he very often, as I've said on a number of occasions, riders want to stick to the same machine that they started with. Mechanic here. This is very precarious for the Mechanic, especially at speeds like this, because if he gets anything wrong, he'll find his fingers very quickly in the back wheel. And on roads like this too, which are consistently changing direction. So he's having to do it himself here. There's one teammate up there. I would have thought there would be more dropping back, but there's only one waiting for him, and he's having a job closing that gap to him. Well, there's no real panic for Alberto Contador as long as he's got no injuries, because although we've got a number of teams on the front setting the pace-making, they're not actually chasing in full. They're just keeping the breakaway of 6 riders in check. So Alberto Contador can take his time, make sure that his bike is in perfect condition, make sure that he is in perfect condition, and slowly use the convoy of cars to weave up. But I am astounded, Phil, that there aren't at least 2 teammates alongside him to make sure he's okay. I would have thought by now they would have come back. They could contact him in the car. The car is here with him. He's up behind Amigo Farmalotto's car at the moment. And you can see by the speed he's actually moving. This peloton is going. There's the front of the peloton, a long straight line out there. They may know that Contador has fallen, but they won't be doing an attack here to keep him away, because it was bad luck. But they're carrying on with what they're doing, and that's chasing down the leaders. The gap has come down by 5 seconds now to 2:55 is the latest gap we have. And Contador is trying again. This is just another chapter of a very unfortunate first few days of the Tour de France, leading up to the rest day tomorrow. 9 days. Now 2 teammates are back. The job is to hook up with him, give him a breather, and get him back in that race. Well, he'll feel a lot more inspired now that he's got some infantry around him to pace him back up to the peloton, but it took an awful long time for them to come back. You might have noticed, if you cast your mind back 48 hours, when Bradley Wiggins crashed, the team stopped exactly at the side of the road and waited for him to get back onto his machine to be with him, alongside him, all the way through his chase into the peloton. Well, it looks like the riders they've sent back here is Hernandez and Noval, who've come back for him. And the more waiting just up the road now, so they're getting themselves together. But look, he's back in the bunch now. Now he'll sort himself out and find out what's really wrong as Pierre Roland. He's stopping again now. He's probably going to change his machine. He wanted to get back into the peloton, and I think there's obviously something wrong with his bike, which is why he stopped. I'm just looking to see what the mechanic's going to do. Not a great day, as you said, Phil. These are the kind of days which we expect to be normal days without any incident, but this year seems to throw something around the corner all the time, and this is the spare bike. Well, on a day that the Tour de France has lost 4 more riders today, Pavel Brut and
Poles, Wouter Poles have both abandoned during the day. Chiruka has crashed and gone to hospital, and Manuel Garati was unable to start when a scan revealed a broken arm. Well, he's at it again now, and he's continuing to chase back. Well, the team saw him stop. We're getting on to the second climb of the day, and it's 7.7 kilometres to the top of this climb, the Col de Pays de Peyrols.
Yeah, from the other side, this is known as the Puy-Marie. It's a very famous climb in professional cycling. And this, I have to say, is a breakaway with a lot of firepower. Luis Leon Sanchez in the orange, he's the rider on the front for Rabobank. Juan Antonio Fletcher in the black and white jersey of Sky, a solid rider when it comes to a breakaway. Nicky Terpstra, the former time trial champion of Holland. Sandy Cassar, always a man for the long breakaways. Thomas Voeckler on the green there from Europcar. He likes this kind of situation. And Johnny Hoogerland, well, he's been very aggressive since the start of this tour.
It's interesting that Sandy Cassar is in the breakaway here, because if you go back to 2004, he was in the breakaway also with Voeckler when they finished 12 minutes ahead of the field, and Voeckler pulled on at the leader's yellow jersey, which he held for 10 days until Lance Armstrong finally got it back on his shoulders. And that was where he made his reputation. And here the two boys come together again in the year 2011. Sandy Cassar
Rid of all of that bad luck as we look at some of these very famous horses from the very heart of the Cantal.
Well, Contador right now is having to get back into the back of the field. Our computer not telling us his location just at the moment. These are the leaders. They're now starting on the climb of the Puy-Marie, as we call it, at the Pas de Peyrols. And this is quite a hard climb. It's second category climb, and it's unlucky for TJ Van Garden, who wears the polka dot jersey today, the American, in the King of the Mountains competition. And unfortunately, Johnny Hoogerland is in this breakaway, and he's going to score well on this, and he will retake the lead in that competition once he goes over the top of the Col Puy-Marie.
Yeah, this, Phil, by the way, is the highest point, the highest road pass in the Massif Central, and enables people to get from Puy-Marie on one side to the Puy de la Tourte on the other. The summit can be reached by Summit if you want to, and I'm sure you're enjoying plenty of fell walking at the moment in between 30 and 45 minutes.
Now, the best man in this breakaway is Tommy Voeckler, and he's not that far behind the overall lead, just over a minute. And because of that, there he is on the right of our picture. They're not going to allow this to go too far. Voeckler, incredibly quick start today, and for some reason nobody was allowed to escape. They kept chasing them. They're on the 10% section here now, or 1 in 10. This is the steep part of the climb.
One rider suffering there, you might have noticed, in fact, was Nicky Terpstra, the big Dutch rider on quick step.
I think suffering's the word. He's hanging on just now as we catch down on the ground with him. Also, Fletcher is the Sky rider in the black there. Hoogerland, and it looks to me as though Nicky Terpstra is in trouble here, very much so.
Well, he is. He's a big rider who's much more at home on the flatlands. He was a rider who's got a very good background on the track. He was formerly the Dutch pursuit champion, a very good individual time trial as well. But all he has to do, Phil, is just suffer a little bit more, maybe for another couple of minutes. And if he can get over the top of the Col de Pas de Peyrols or the Puy-Marie with a deficit of about 30 to 40 seconds, he should be able to catch them back up on the descent with a couple of risks around 1 or 2 corners.
A very nice crowd here in the department of the Puy de Dôme, which is the biggest climb in the region, but it's no longer used by the public. It's they're protecting it now for the environment, and you are allowed to walk on it, but they don't allow vehicles up there. Now, you can see by the quality of the gradient here, Sandy Cassar looking very content at the moment, riding alongside Fletcher. Hoogerland is the man, 2:04, who's going to take on 1:81 when they come to the top of the climb.
Well, the flag you can see waving on the left-hand side is from the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, and we all know who that's for. It's for Frank and Andy Schleck and Team Leopard Trek. Sandy Cassar in the white jersey just over on the left-hand side has been a professional since the year 2000, and he's always been on the same team. Française des Jeux, or FDJ.com as it was called at one time, back to Française des Jeux. And he's actually from Calais in the north of France, while we rejoined briefly there Nicky Terpstra. I think as we look at around about a kilometre to go, if he can just hold on to 15 to 30 seconds over the top, he should catch back up.
Yeah, I think also once these King of the Mountains points, the first 4 riders share them today. 5 for the man who goes over first, down to 1.
And I love the way Thomas Voeckler just looks at the opposition in a breakaway like this. He's checking, look at the move. That's what he was doing. He's waiting to see what Johnny Hoogerland was going to do.
Good acceleration, but Hoogerland's read it well. He's straight into the slipstream of the Frenchman. And he may have read it right this time, because little Tommy Voigtler may have gone a little bit soon. Or has he? It's hard to say. That's a photo finish, and our camera was not in the best of positions. We'll have to tell you what our computer tells us later when the judges phone in the result from that one, but it was very, very close.
Well, at least we know they got first and second.
Very good point. So they're sharing it out. Let's see if we can see it. There's the line on the road. Just watch where the wheels are. It's when the tyre touches the white line, so it's right beneath.
I give that to Voigtler.
I just think you're right, Paul, but it was close. Perfectly timed sprint by him.
But bear in mind, Johnny Hoogeland there, Phil, will pick up 3 points, so he will extend his lead in the competition. But for Thomas Voigtler, he's thinking further down the road. He needs to sit back a fraction now, wait for these guys to come back and keep the five-man group together for as long as possible. Because, as I said, this next 30 miles of racing from the top of the Puy-Marie, or the Pas de Pérol as it's also called, there are another 4 big climbs to go over. Real leg-breaking stuff.
Yes, plenty of them, and no sooner are we down and then we're off. Now they're giving it to Voigtler ahead of Hoogeland, Sandy Cassar and Fletcher. That was the order over the top. So it is 5 points for Voigtler, a valuable 3 for Hoogeland, who now goes leader on the road, and Sylvain Chavanel. This is a sad sight. He had a brilliant opening week last year in the Tour, but this time it looks as though the champion of France is falling away, and if he falls away this early in the day, he might be abandoning.
Well, I have to say, Phil, again, he's one of the many riding wounded in the Tour de France after the number of crashes we've had over this first week of the race. It's not surprising at all to see Omega Pharma Lotto doing a lot of the pacemaking. This is not a chase that they're doing currently. They're just making sure they keep that advantage pegged, as confirmation does just come through that it was Voigtler ahead of Hoogeland, Cassar and Juan Antonio Fletcher being the first 4 riders over the top of that climb. And I'd have to say that Thomas Voigtler looks for the moves, and he reads his race book very delicately at the start of the Tour to figure out which are the ideal stages for him. And I, for one, had already put this down as a Thomas Voigtler type stage.
Now these are tricky descents. The roads, though, are guarded here, and they've left a little bit of a side as well. But now they've got to chase down as well as they go up, of course. Little chance perhaps for Nicky Terpstra to get back. But these boys will race down. It's quite a long descent, this, before we get on to another second category climb, the Col de Pertus. As we go back to the peloton here and see the Omega boys setting the pace. Now there's Mark Cavendish also going off the back at the moment. So it's the second time he's waved farewell to the peloton. He came back, yeah. Bernard Eisel, who looks after him on these moments in the mountains, going back with him, keep his morale high and do a lot of work to help him stay within that time limit if they are to really fall out of the action. These are the descents at the front, and that's Luis Leon Sanchez going down. It looks as though, in fact, Nicky Terpstra has dropped quite a way back here. I'm surprised that Johnny Hoogeland here is finding the descent not to his liking. Tommy Voigtler is a superb descender and maybe wants rid of Hoogeland because he's challenging him for that King of the Mountains. So Johnny Hoogeland's going to have to really work hard. They take the tightest corner, like the Formula One motor cars. As we go back to the top of the climb of the Pérol, this is the peloton coming up. The clock's still counting. And no big rush from the peloton here at all. And so it remains that Thomas Voigtler is the leader of the Tour de France, virtually on the road at the moment. 3:35 is the gap. And 1 minute 29 was the deficit of Voigtler overall this morning. So as the peloton cape up there and zip up their extra jerseys for the cooler descent down to the valley, then they'll sooner get down the bottom and they'll be climbing out of it again. Tommy, we're back now moments ago. Take a look at this. This is Johnny Hoogeland, who's trying to catch up with Thomas Voigtler on the descent of the Puy-Marie. He's not a good descender, and he doesn't like this slight dampness of the road. We had a thunderstorm here about 2 hours ago. The road is still damp, but boy, he didn't like that line at all. He had to kick out the saddle again. He's losing ground to Voigtler on the descents. So as he continues down here, our camera's staying with him on the descent. Riding in his first Tour de France, he's great at going up these mountains, but he's not too happy going down them. And this is the peloton on the same descent. The return of the French champion on the descent, Sylvain Chavanel. They are flying down here. The roads are basically dry, but in the woods it is still damp from the thunderstorm, which happened it was about 5 hours ago now when that storm passed through. Let's hope it stays away for the rest of the day. These are great racing roads, but highly dangerous technical roads. This is Johnny Hoogerland. He needs to work very hard now to repair the damage lost going downhill. Our cameraman is now off in search of the leaders. There should be 5 of them.
Well, I think there'll be 4 of them. One man we might well pick up, because he was tailed off as well, is Juan Antonio Fletcher. As we keep looking around these corners, there's a single rider there. It just goes to show how fast the motorbike has to go to try and catch up with the bike riders on a descent like this, because in all seriousness, Phil, around 1 or 2 of these tricky little technical corners, a push bike can go around faster than a motorbike.
Yes, it won't. It could be a little while before we see these empty roads come alive with cyclists at the moment, because this is how much ground that Johnny Hoogerland has lost. There's the first man who has been dropped by the flying Voigtler.
That's Sanchez.
Is it Sanchez that we're coming up on? He was dropped very early on, but not before Hoogerland went. So Luis Leon Sanchez now trying to get back on terms as well. They're going to have to try and regroup on the Col de Pertus. But, you know, this is a tough call now, because Voigtler is on fire and on a mission. And this is a very sad sight. We've cut back to the main field here.
There's a rider from Omega Pharma Lotto down there. It's a big, tall rider. He's being looked after by Andre Greipel. Again, you can see
there's also 2 riders from Team BMC there stopping by the roadside as well here. Somebody's gone straight off the road and down into the trees there. And once again, the Radio Shack boys are in the thick of it here.
That's Andreas Kloden on the right-hand side. Bad luck continues for Radio Shack.
Yeah, they're looking down there to see who went down there as an Astana ride. Still more down there. At least 2 or 3 riders are down that ditch. But Andreas Kloden, he was the new leader of Radio Shack, because he was the only one left with a chance, and now he's being claimed by a crash.
Well, that was unbelievable. It was a straight part of the road. We're just looking here at the riders from BMC Racing who are involved in that.
Michael Shah is the big boy on the left of our program there, as they're all looking around to say, what on earth? Irizar is here, the strong man on Radio Shack, just looking around for which one of his team is down. There's at least 2 of them there. Kloden we've seen. There's another 2 getting back on the bikes on the right. This is a nasty crash down here, and there's 1 rider from Astana being helped back up to the top. Looks as though he's really hurt his back here, but they've got him up. Well, this is an amazing tour. They just found a hole on the trees there, and through it they went.
I can only assume that was Alexander Vinokurov, because otherwise the whole of Team Astana, Phil, would not be stopped at the side of the road like this, and I think he was stuck to his bike. That's why they were trying to lift him up.
Well, that's Andrei Grifko who's tried to hold. That looks like Vinokurov there, who's being held out of the ditch. The man who was trying to pull off the stage. I mean, that's certainly Alexander Vinokurov. Took a nasty bang, I think, on his back. He's been also helped out here by Vaitkus, who is behind him.
Well, this was in a straight part of the road, and you could see the main field really giving it some hammer on the descent there. There's the riders who stopped alongside him.
Di Gregorio is 62, Dmitry Fofanov is 63. The whole team has waited here. None has gone forward, and this doesn't look to me as though Vinokurov is going to be able to carry. The doctors are now with him. I think the problem is not his back, I think it's his right leg. And this is an Omega Pharma Lotto rider here.
It looks like Zabriskie. Well, this is absolute chaos, and it's just on that slight bend. Again, it's a mixture film of the dry road and a little bit of dampness coming around the corner. Somebody probably not going quite so far, and then it's the panic. Once you start to see 2 or 3 riders go down, you touch the brakes, and you should not really have to touch your brakes on a corner like this. But when it's slightly damp, you lock up the back wheel, the front wheel goes, and once you start to lose the front wheel on a push bike going downhill extremely fast, there's not very much you can do.
You see there's some rock-solid posts there. Those are concrete posts guarding the corner here. There's only 1 straw bale I've seen off to the far right. The riders seem to go through before that. I'm not sure it's not the same corner where Johnny Hoogerland was really having a problem where trying to keep his balance. Well, we've gone up to last 4 kilometres, I think it was, on that sign we've just passed. That is now the climb of the Col de Pertus that they've now started, 4.4 kilometres. The ambulances have all rolled up here now to try and sort it out. The race referees have sent our ground motorcycle away and back up to the race, so we're watching this from a helicopter. The blue helmet there, I'm not too sure if that is not Dave Zabriskie on the left. As they sit down, as our cameras are planning. Well, we've gone forward to pick up with Voigtler at the moment, who's pushing on and regrouping at the front. 4 riders up front. who is actually involved in the crash down at that point. There's another look at it again as the riders were coming round the corner. The head of the peloton, it's always the worst when the head of the peloton creates the crash. And what we can't see from these shots, of course, off to our left is a whole host of riders. Certainly Vinokurov went down there and other riders went down to try and get him out. The peloton continues to descend. It looks as though this is the peloton live now, and they're not going down very quickly at all. So they're trying to regroup and muster their forces back together again here, not take advantage of that crash at all. Our computer is now saying that it is David Miller who was involved in that crash. Well, if they're right, Vinokurov has officially abandoned the race. So after his glorious day yesterday, he's now out of the Tour de France today. And apparently this is going to be his last Tour de France. So that is a sad exit for Alexander Vinokurov. Now we're back up with the leaders here. Another faller there was Jurgen van der Broek, the top Belgian cyclist. Well, these four boys will not know the seriousness of that crash. Vinokurov has officially been taken out of the Tour. He's abandoned. He's got into the ambulance, which has stopped at the scene. Van den Broek is the Belgian rider who was down. David Miller was a faller again as well. And this was that caught a few of the good riders because it happened at the front of the peloton on the descent. And they went straight on and misread the corner. Well, this is Johnny Hoogland here at the moment. As he now is coming, he's got back up. You see, he's got through to the cars behind those leaders. So very shortly, Hoogland will make 5 leaders up front. And they're continuing on in the hills today. They started chatting. There's Fabian Cancellara, dead centre. Andy Schleck has also said it. So it looks like for the moment they've slowed down, which is 6:17 now for the riders who've gone up front. But quite honestly, looking at the size of the peloton, there are not many riders behind the race right now, except those who are going to hospital. And that will include Jurgen van den Broek and Alexander Vinokurov. The others may well come back on this climb of the Col de Pertus. But another amazing day, and a controversial one at that, in the Tour de France. So Philippe Gilbert, not sure what he wants to do. This is Van den Broek back at the crash scene. He's looking very stunned there and in quite a lot of pain. And that is a real shame. He's also the teammate, by the way, of the green jersey, Philippe Gilbert. Well, we keep on seeing pictures of Van den Broek, Paul, and it's an awful shame. Gilbert appears to have joined forces with the Leopard Trek and the yellow jersey to call a truce here as the peloton regroups with all of the riders who've waited back at that crash scene. We won't be seeing Van den Broek or Vinokurov. They've definitely abandoned the Tour. They're heading to hospital.
In the meantime, the 5 leaders, and this is another leader of one of the teams. This is Vladimir Karpets. He's just got a mechanical incident. He was at the back end of the race, just changing a rear wheel. It would appear that there is some kind of a truce to it with the main field, and I hope we don't cast our minds back to the truce on the road into Spa last year when there was a lot of accidents like this as well.
Yeah,
because what we could see is that the 5 leaders could run away with this race, and we could see a situation where Thomas Voeckler is in the lead of the Tour de France, as he was a number of years ago, by a large proportion of minutes.
Yes, because on that day he was in the breakaway, which finished 12 minutes ahead. It took quite a long time before they got the yellow jersey off him. This is the scene with Jurgen van den Broek, who finished 5th last year in the Tour de France. Here, this is the breakaway. They're just pushing on. They're pushing up towards 7 minutes as well. They've regrouped after that descent, where Voeckler really charged down it. Hoogland has now got back. Cassar in the white 131 seems to have recovered. Fletcher in the black has come back as well. And they're climbing now. They may be aware, and I'm sure they are aware now with the race radios, as to what has happened behind. But they've nothing to do with it, and they're getting on with the job. The first target now for Voeckler will be the yellow jersey at the end of this day, and the polka dot jersey could be his as well, but he's got to match his wits against Johnny Hoogland for that one.
Race radio just crackling there, Phil, with the name Andreas Klöden, and he's managed to get himself back into the main part of the peloton as well after being involved in that rather nasty crash. We're now at 1 kilometre to go to the summit. Now, this is rather strange because Thomas Voeckler could very well mark himself out of the points here. Rather silly, I think, for the Frenchman to try that kind of tactic, especially with the reputation he has.
Yes, and with the reputation Belgian cyclists have, they're very good tactics. And so Hugeland has manoeuvred Voeckler back into the group. They're about 800 meters from the top of the climb. They both can score, all four will score points in the breakaway. There are 5 of them. There's 5 for the win. Now, just at the moment, Hugeland leads the King of the Mountains with 9 points. Voeckler is second with 7. So he's going to mark Voeckler for sure. This is the sprint for the top of the climb, and he's managed to get Hugeland into the lead here. All eyes down. These two are fighting out the next wearer of the polka dot jersey as King of the Mountains. Johnny Hugeland looking to the right to see where he is. He's right in his slipstream. This time it may go the way of Johnny Hugeland. I'm not sure. He's got the best on the bend. Hugeland gets it, so he gets the 5 points, and Voeckler on this occasion will get the 3.
Well, Hugeland did well there to fight his way back into this group.
So just checking that very quickly. We've got 10 points now for Voeckler in the King of the Mountains, and we've got 5 points. So he's just kept his lead, his new lead in the King of the Mountains, Hugeland. The leaders have regrouped, 5 of them together now. Hugeland and Voeckler have had words, and this is where they came together. And I think Hugeland was explaining here, look, what are you doing, taking off and waiting for no one? There's too far to go. A little bit of sign language, and so they've regrouped now on the descent of the Pertus. So it looks like a truce is called amongst the breakaways. We now have 5 riders come back together at the front. Remember, Thomas Voeckler starting the day a minute 29 off yellow. He now leads the Tour de France here by 7 minutes and 30 seconds. So he leads the Tour actually by 6 minutes now overall in real time, if that's the way we go to the finish.
Well, the back end of the race, arrière de la course as they call it, and that is Mark Cavendish once again being dislodged off the main field. The sprinters don't like days like these, and although these are not the big mountains of the Alps or the Pyrenees, they really hurt the sprinters a lot.
No, we're in the department of the Cantal, and this is a real lovely, beautiful roads for driving your car on and riding your touring bike, but they make for tough roads when you are actually taking part in the Tour de France. Tyler Farrar here. Well, looking at the peloton, it looks as though they're settling into tempo riding again now. The truce, I think, has been officially called off as they start to race. The gap when they're starting is at 7 minutes and 18 seconds. We've got the 5 leaders together. Mark Cavendish has just been dropped by the peloton itself. So I think that in itself is a sign now that the tempo is back on.
That's Frank Schleck we're looking to the eyes of here with the red, white and blue around the middle of his jersey, looking very concentrated. A lot of riders from Leopard Trek near the front of this main field. The fact that you see sprinters like Tyler Farrar and of course Mark Cavendish going off the back means that there is not that much of a truce going on here, Phil, because the pressure is extremely high.
It's names like Brakovic have gone, the proposed leader of Radio Shack. Sadly, Bradley Wiggins left. The leader of the Sky team, Chris Horner, also a possible top 3 finish in Paris. Alexander Vinokourov today. Jürgen van den Broek today. He was expected to make a top 3 as well in Paris. All out of the Tour, all with crash injuries.
Well, I made it as they went over the summit there, Phil. 7 minutes and 40 seconds. Just slipping back there, not surprisingly at the top of the climb. Andre Greipel, the big sprinter on Team Omega Pharma Lotto.
Now this is up with the leaders. This must be Johnny Hugeland here. As if keeping up with Thomas Voeckler isn't hard enough. He's had a flat tyre, but he's up and running again eventually.
Well, that's probably a lot to do with the fact in the early part of the stage there was a lot of rain, a lot of wetness on the surface of the road, and when you do get those rainy situations, a lot of small stones get washed onto the road surface and they get picked up by the rubber in these riders' tyres. It doesn't cause an immediate flat tyre or a burst. What it does is the little sharp flints, they work into the rubber and eventually click through into the inner tube.
Well, the next climb comes the Col de Serre, and we topped out at 80 kilometres. So we're just on 5 kilometres from the top of that. That leaves us a flat-out 50 miles to race to the finish.
Well, now that if we can say the leading group of 5 riders have called a truce, I think they will wait for him to come back into contention. As we see here, Luis Leon Sanchez meandering his way through the convoy of cars behind. Because of the fact that between these climbs, we're actually coming to the easier climbs of this little group of 5 climbs. The next 2 climbs will be only 3rd category. There's 2 points available for the first rider over the top and 1 for the second. I think they'll need to start working quite consistently on these valley roads to conserve their advantage. But currently the main field is giving a big advantage to the rider wearing the green jersey there, and that of course Thomas Voeckler.
Just seeing Luis Leon Sanchez make his way back. He's in the Rabobank orange strip there, just sitting up riding no-handed. His Tour de France stage win in 2008 was in Aurillac, which is where the race will restart from on Tuesday as we journey south. So he's in the same region now as to where it's all started good for him. The other win not too far away, I suppose, in Saint-Giron. Any water wanted by Thomas Voeckler? Not interested. No. All right then.
Well, we're getting a bit of information coming through that Garmin rider was confirmed as Dave Zabriskie on the ground, and quite possibly he may well also be announced as an abandon from the Tour de France today. So that small crash on the descent has again caused a certain amount of carnage in the Tour. If you're talking about experience, though, that man in that green jersey from Europcar, Thomas Voeckler, riding his 9th Tour de France this year, and last year he won a stage into Luchon, and 2 years ago he won a stage into Perpignan.
De France, and behind the calmness of the fields here, it has been a rough day for the riders in the Tour. We've lost their potential Tour winners, and Jürgen van den Broek out today. Vinokourov has gone. He's had a 3rd place finish in Paris in the past. The last man to retire moments ago, Frederick Willems, who is the teammate of Van den Broek, reducing the Amiga Pharma Lotto team of Philippe Gilbert now to just 6 riders left on board as we come to the first official rest day tomorrow of this event. An amazing day. There's still over 7.5 minutes up, those 5 leaders just now. Now we follow the tail of the peloton here, riders dashing back on.
Just noticed Mark Cavendish, there he is, penultimate rider in the main field. He will have taken a few risks with his mate. Of course, that will be Bernie Eisel pacing him back into this group. But as you can see, Phil, they now are starting to turn up the pressure here, because this main field is into an extremely long line. We might as well put our seatbelts on, because we're in for a hard chase for the rest of the day.
Well, there's no doubt now that race has changed its whole attitude to the day, because look at that split in the peloton as we start to go towards the climb of the Col de Serre, where the leaders are already on. Now, we are hearing from the race that what we said was absolutely right. They decided they would wait until crashed riders rejoined if they were still on the road. But they don't know what they're going to do next, apparently, so we'll find out. The answer to me is already in front of us. They're going to race, and that is a serious split.
Well, we've had a precedent when we had the riders making a truce last year on the road into Spa on the 2nd day of the Tour de France, the 2nd open day of the Tour de France through the Belgian Ardennes, when Sylvain Chavanel won the stage. The riders decided to call a truce, but the race was given the times that they crossed the finishing line, maybe not the positions, and I think the team managers will have thought back to that and realized, right, we've got to chase. Currently it's only Garmin Cervelo doing the pacemaking, but I think we're going to have to see for the first time maybe a little bit of action coming from Alberto Contador, Saxo Bank, and of course from Leopard Trek, because the rider who's in the breakaway, Thomas Voeckler, is not the same bike rider he was when he had the yellow jersey so many years ago.
Well, that truce last year actually affected the destiny of the green jersey, because what they did when the bunch came across the finishing line after they were racing through the Belgian Ardennes and being battered on bad road conditions, it was Cancellara at that time who was in the yellow jersey, and he was the big man who told everybody to slow down. And as a result of that, only Sylvain Chavanel profited on the day. Anyway, we're looking at Alberto Contador now. He's having his own private Tour de France of falling off and changing bikes, but he looks as though he managed to avoid that most serious crash there, because it happened near the front. That's why it caught so many of the big names. There's George Hincapie, second right of the 2 boys in red. Cadel Evans is safe as well, which for the Australians, I know, is very poignant just now. He's having a great tour, and Thor Hushovd, we don't know just how long this man is going to keep this yellow jersey, but it won't be any longer than the rest of this day if they don't close that breakaway down.
Well, one of Thor Hushovd's training partners down in Monaco, in fact, is Richie Porte, who goes training with him, and he said that they try out each other, they try and race each other when they go out on training rides sometimes, and leading up to the Tour de France, sadly Tom Boonen is no longer with us. He said Thor Hushovd and Tom Boonen were both riding in the climbs extremely well.
This is a little replay for you. See, there was no big sprint. Voigtler deciding it wasn't worth the extra effort. And so Hoogerland goes over the top. Sandy Cassar in third place there, but only the first two get points on the third category mountain. The peloton are over the top now of the Col d'Isère. They're heading to the Côte de la Chevade. The difference between a côte and a col, one is a mountain, one is a hill. As they go down this beautiful stretch of highway now, what a relief after those narrow roads climbing through the department of the Cantal today. The gap continues to come down. 6 minutes or more or less now. 71 kilometers remaining. That's about 44, 46 miles still to ride. This is the group going on to the next climb of the day, which is the Côte de la Chevade. And that's the next third category climb. So again, only the top two over the top get the points. 2 and 1 point. This is becoming, for the moment, a two-man battle for the next wearer of the polka dot jersey. It's live action here. This is coming up to the top of the Côte de la Chevade here as they come up towards the banner. Watch out, we expect the battle to continue. Hoogerland is on the front at the moment. He's the new leader just now in the King of the Mountains. It looks like he's going to go, and again will be unchallenged here by Thomas Voigtler, who is actually trying to race for the yellow jersey now. So he may have made a bit of a deal here with Hoogerland, saying you go for the King of the Mountains and you help me stay clear of the field and get me a yellow jersey tonight. Now these are the riders, big names we've lost from the Tour after 9 days. Brakovic of Radio Shack, Wiggins of Great Britain, Horner, Vinokurov, Van den Broek.
Finished this race 1 minute and 29 seconds ahead of the Thor Hushovd group.
At the moment, they are still holding together 5 men, although Luis Leon Sanchez, just below our camera here, he is the one boy who has yo-yoed a little bit. He doesn't like to freewheel down the mountains in the company of the rise. He likes to see where he's going. He's a stage winner in the past, as we've said earlier. As they continue, good tempo riding. It's good pressure now. The last riders on the road are just over 7 minutes back, so they're not too far off the back of the peloton. The flags of Norway flying high for the Maillot Jaune of Thor Hushovd. This remarkable man is still in the peloton here as they come over the top of the climb here. That is a very, very good piece of riding. About 5:31 the gap now. So slowly but surely, they were 6:12 behind at the Col d'Isère. They're now 5:31 behind on the climb of the Côte de Chevade. There are still, though, 3 more climbs and the green jersey sprint to come. Down from the helicopter, they are still speeding along. The gap, though, is sort of solidifying. 5 1/4 minutes. It's still slowly but surely chipping off seconds now, rather than big chunks of time, though, as we run into the last 39 miles of the day, 61 kilometers. Just this is a nasty little climb. This next second category is the third category 2 of the day. It is the Col de Prat. It's quite steep in places. They're going to leave that lovely main highway again as we rejoin the leaders here. And they are holding themselves together now, 5 of them. Stage winners of the Tour de France, with the exception of Johnny Hoogerland. He's in his first Tour de France. There's the information. It's 5 miles up this mountain. It takes us to the second highest point of the race today. And as we continue to move around the Bonneville Rock, we'll also see below the peloton in a long, long line of riders here now. They really are. They're not closing in anything like as fast as they were, though.
No, we're just looking at the Virgin of Notre Dame de Haute-Auvergne there, Phil. That was assembled in. That was actually put up in 1878. Interesting to note the way that Team Leopard Trek are riding. They're sitting there at the front, just waiting, letting everybody else do the pacemaking. Andy Schleck is at the back of that group of riders. So far, he hasn't done a thing wrong. And I think his brother is riding in exceptional form. He was great in the recent Tour of Switzerland. He put in a great defense of his title, an event that he won the previous year ahead of Lance Armstrong. But I think those two riders, when we come into the mountains, they're going to be a serious thorn in the side of Alberto Contador, because I think they've both got almost identical form, and we'll see a little bit of the old 1-2 as we go into the mountains.
Well, it's the big Dutch hope for a podium finish, of course.
Well, 4 minutes and 45 seconds. As you can see, Luis Leon Sanchez is quite happy to sit in second place. Sandy Cassar in third place. Huge crowd turning out here once again as we make our way through the Massif Central. We're on a fairly reasonable gradient here, around about 7% the gradient, and we're just going inside of 4 kilometers to go to the top of the climb.
7% the gradient at the moment where the climbers are on, and they're I don't know, about 3 kilometers or so from the summit of this climb, the Col de Prat. Not a long descent, although it goes up a little hill which isn't classified, then it gently comes off the heights of the day as we go down towards Neuveglise with 30 kilometers left to go, and that's where they've got the green jersey sprint today. Hugeland of Vacansoleil. They've been away after the first hour of the day. That was just soon after that they got away, about 43 kilometers. Vogler attacked and was quickly joined by Hugeland, and then came Fletcher, and then Cassar, and Nicky Terpstra and Sanchez came up, but Terpstra was dropped on the first climb, so he's gone back into the field.
Well, Johnny Hugeland is quite happy to come and help with the pacemaking now, and Thomas Vogler dropping down into second position. We're right in the very heart of the Cantal, the mountains of the Cantal, in the middle of the Massif Central here, surrounded by the climbs we went over earlier, the Puy-Marie. And this is one of the highest summits there, as Johnny Hugeland got no problem at all there, Phil, to get maximum points again ahead of Thomas Vogler.
Yeah, I'm convinced that they've got a little arrangement there. It's not allowed, of course, but when you're in a breakaway, you've all got your targets. The target now has switched from the King of the Mountains to the Maillot Jaune for Tommy Vogler. He needs the strength of Hugeland as well, so he's obviously said to him, you can take the points in the mountains as long as you help me try to keep clear of the field to get yellow tonight. Deal done. Hugeland's got the points over Vogler. Out of their area now, but of course we passed through Brittany on the 4th stage of the Tour de France. We're now on stage number 9 as they make their way up to the top of the Col de Prat, and let's have a look at the clock as he goes over the top. Contador leads him over, I think, 4:53 perhaps. Well, that's a big gain because they went over the last climb 5:31 down, so they did climb quite quickly up that mountain. Now, zipping up his green jersey there is Philippe Gilbert. Next time we get to a prize point, it's for him, because there's maximum points from the peloton for the man that wins. Not maximum points on the sprint itself, because those 5 riders up front won't be caught in the next 11 miles or so of racing. So as we are heading down the mountain, don't forget to experience the tour like never before, and go to NBCsports.com/cycling and get Tour de France All Access. Watch every stage live and online in your tablet or even on your phone. It's available now on NBCsports.com/cycling. So
the way the race has developed over the first week of racing, because almost every time we've gone through the sprint point, we've never actually sprinted for first place for the sprint. It's always been for 6th place. It's nearly always been a 5-man breakaway.
yeah, and that's what's happening again today. We have 5 men, and the man in our camera lens right now, the green jerseyed figure of Thomas Vogler, he has the most to gain today, and he's going to fight all the way to the finishing line today. If he doesn't get enough time to pinch yellow, he'll still want to win the stage. It's a perfect finish for him because he come up this little climb, 1.6 kilometers from the finishing line, and the climb ends just as you pop into the square in Saint-Flour.
Saint-Flour. It's a very difficult climb too. The last time we came here was a big breakaway situation. Previously to that, it was David Echavarria won himself the stage again in a long breakaway. Fortunately for the riders, it's not quite as hot as it has been on these stages in recent years, because the temperature is only around about, it's not as high as 70. I think it's not too much more above 60 and that's because of the cool rain and wind that we had at the start of the race. I do feel that once we go down to the Pyrenees, well, I do hope that we start to get the heat of the Tour de France, because that makes it a lot better for the riders' recovery.
We're forecasting it. It's very hot in the Alps at the moment and in the Pyrenees. So don't forget to log on to NBCSports.com/podium. Do this every day during the tour. You can win a trip to next year's Tour de France, a Cervelo S5 bike, a clean bottle which opens at both ends, and a Giro helmet. Today's code word is pedal. So right in the distance there, the Tour de France snakes its way through this very, very beautiful department of France, gently making its way towards the finish. The gap continues to fall, but will it fall fast enough to spoil a perfect day for Thomas Voeckler? Well, we're looking here at the lone figure of Juan Antonio Fletcher. Now, we were in a live break there because for local, and we couldn't break away from it, but there has been a most bizarre crash here. Now, watch this. In the leading group here, a television car comes through like that and hits Fletcher. He can't believe it. But watch behind, because Hugeland goes into a barbed wire fence. Now, can you believe this in the Tour de France? And that car driver can expect to have driven his last kilometres on the route of the Tour de France today. That was absolutely disgraceful, and Fletcher would not have known anything about that. We're going to show you that again in a second. But now it's Thomas Voeckler going on. He didn't race. He waited to find out what was going on. Watch this. Watch the car change direction. The reason being is an approaching tree on the side there, and he had to go round the tree, but he really should have broke out of it. Fletcher would know nothing about that, as he's hit the rider there and taken out Hugeland, who really spectacularly lands on his back, and that's probably the best side to land on, in all honesty, onto what is a barbed wire fence there. And Hugeland is now being attended to by the doctors. He's not back on his bike. Fletcher is, and he will get back up to the leaders, but that is disgraceful. So the car driver of Antenne 2 et 3, French television, he can expect to be seeing Paris a bit earlier than the rest of the Tour de France. After that, it was disgraceful, Paul.
Well, bad driving, I'd have to say, Phil. I know he moved to swerve around that tree. I think he was caught unawares, but he did not need to move quite as much as he did. And really, in anything, he should have put the brakes on and given the riders priority.
Absolutely. Well, now Thomas Voeckler here is saying to the two guys, let's just check it out. His team car's going to give him an update. This is it. Yeah, he's indicating there, do not push on. We need them. Only fair. And the gap at around about 5 minutes here. Well, what delayed the peloton is now delaying the breakaway. What an incredible Tour de France this really is this year. There are three together waiting for Fletcher. So Voeckler's called a truce. I don't think Hugeland can physically get back up. He's being attended to with no further news, but Fletcher is chasing, and I think they will wait till he gets up.
Well, Fletcher went down very hard, but I must admit Johnny Hugeland's crash was much more dramatic, going straight off the road and getting tangled up in that fence at the side. I hope he can get back up, and I hope he can be treated, Phil, because at the end of the day, if he can finish the stage, at least there is a King of the Mountains jersey waiting for him. And
a well-earned one too. The irony will be, of course, if he were to retire from the Tour, then it's Voeckler who would take on the King of the Mountains title tonight, when he was trying to ease Hugeland into that jersey in return for his efforts to get him a yellow one. So the peloton, well, for once they're not involved in the controversy. They're riding along through these beautiful range of plane trees as they just keeping the tempo going. The gap is 5 minutes 9. It's still very much the advantage of the breakaway.
Well, it's all because the other teams are not coming forward to help Omega Pharma Lotto. They're the ones doing all this work in the front end, the spearhead of the peloton this afternoon. That's because Philippe Gilbert feels that he can get himself the victory. It's a very dangerous maneuver by some of the other teams, especially teams like Leopard Trek, Saxo Bank, because Thomas Voeckler, with the form that he's got this year, Phil, he could be very difficult to dislodge if you give him a 5-minute start into the Pyrenees.
Well, we can confirm that Johnny Hugeland is back on his bike and chasing, but we can't find where he is at the moment. But he's on the road and he's chasing the breakaway. Now they've got to get on with the job in hand. They can't let that race get too close to them once they smell the kill. This is approaching about 2 kilometers maximum to the sprint now at the green jersey point. these boys are not terribly interested in the sprint. It does carry a prize of $1,700 for the first rider over the line, so that may happen and may prove of an interest. So we're looking now at Thomas Voeckler here. He's just been back to the Europe car here, and he'll rejoin the leaders. We're picking him up now. He's going to get a lot of cheers here, and he's got his patches on with his knee, but he fell on the chain fence there with his back, and I think I have to say, Paul, that was the best way to go into that fence, luckily.
Very fortunate that he went off the road. The man who went down hardest was Juan Antonio Fletcher. But, you know, bike riders are tough characters. You know, you don't become a bike rider by being soft, and that's for sure. That's reflected there by Johnny Hoogerland. He wants to get back into this race. He has to finish the stage if he wants to inherit the King of the Mountains jersey, which at the start of the day was on the shoulders of the American rider, TJ Van Garderen.
But, you know, in all my years of reporting the Tour de France, these things don't happen. We saw the motorcycle take out the champion of Denmark. Now we're seeing a media car take out the leaders of the Tour de France. Those things never happened.
It's all the pressure. I think the level of requirement for the race to get better, as Sandy Casada gets no challenge here to maximum points going through the sprint point of the day. 1,500 euros for him, 1,000 euros for Thomas Voeckler in second place, but Voeckler is not concerned about that. Voeckler is concerned about the clock just at the top there, Phil, that says that it's 5 minutes advantage.
Yes, we'll see what it is when the peloton come. There is a great interest in that sprint, of course, for the 6th place. Carries big points. Now this is Johnny Hoogerland here, swathed in bandages, trying to fix him up on the go, because this is actually a mobile doctor.
Well, I have to say, and I can say from experience, Phil, his injuries are pretty much superficial, because what happened was he got caught up in a barbed wire fence, and the same thing happened to me once in Paris-Roubaix. I was taken out by another rider, and those barbed wires, they go in extremely deeply and they hurt an awful lot, and Johnny Hoogerland here is in serious pain, and he's just going to have to sit up, I think, Phil, and wait for the main field. Well,
it's not a simple matter to be patched up and get back. He is in pain, Johnny Hoogerland, and it was a spectacular flight, turning over in midair and crashing through that fence. For Hushoff to move into that 3rd place slot. And we're not sure, and we haven't seen Rojas, and not a mention of his name all day. We'll know when we come to the sprint point if he's here or not.
Well, we have seen Philippe Gilbert. He's quite resplendent in his green jersey, sitting in about 5th or 6th position. Happy to stay at the pointy end of the peloton while we're just about to pick up Johnny Hoogerland with the main field. And they're all going to say, wow, what happened to him?
Well, Hoogerland has been swept up. That's sad sight indeed. He's gone back into the peloton. He's pained from that nasty crash. And now we are racing here for the 5th place. So that's even more points at stake now for the man that takes it. And it could give Philippe Gilbert a very clear lead in this competition tonight if he can finish this one off. We'll be interested to see if Hushoff challenges him. These are his teammates who are moving around. He's quite clearly going. Doesn't look like he's going to be challenged, does it? As Philippe Gilbert, his teammate, will move over as he gets up towards that finishing line. It looks as though Philippe Gilbert has been given a free rein here, and Rojas perhaps is not in this peloton. Otherwise, he would be right up on the back wheel of Philippe Gilbert. Well, these are the days when you really profit, and today this has been a big profit for Philippe Gilbert. Maximum points from the rest.
Yeah, well, for Philippe Gilbert, Phil, this for him is starting to consolidate that advantage, and he is one of the only riders who have said, yes, I am making the green jersey a title that I want to garner at the end of the race. The big sprinters like Farah and, of course, Cavendish have said, no, we'll try and win stages and see how it develops later on. And it may be over these stages that, in fact, Philippe Gilbert gets himself the overall win in that competition when we go up to Paris.
Just about all of the tractors in the Cantal area of France are down there by the look of it today, so there won't be much being done in the fields as the passage of the Tour de France. Good result for Philippe Gilbert, consolidate his lead in green. So as we leave the town of Neuve-Église, still rocking from that terrible crash that we've seen in the breakaway, Hoogerland is now back in the pack, and still Fletcher is riding alone. They can't really wait for him because he's a bit too far behind. So we've got 3 riders now, and the lead over the peloton is 4 minutes 35 seconds, 26 kilometers to go. That side. This is Johnny Hoogerland now behind the peloton, and having a chat with the doctor, and he's very, very pained here. Well, I hope he's not dropped back here to discuss abandoning the race, because that would be terrible for Johnny Hogeland. He's been an animator of the opening 9 days of the Tour. It's his first Tour de France. He will be pulling on the polka dot jersey of TJ Van Garderen tonight if he can get to the finish. But there's no doubt he is hurting, and also so too is Juan Antonio Fletcher, Paul. I think he's hurt his knee and his elbow.
Yep, he really has. He was the one who actually went down the hardest, I have to say, Phil, because he had no way of controlling his fall when that car hit him, and the car was not, it should not have been in that place at that time, and it should not have been trying to overtake those riders when he did. It's all now being led up to Garmin-Cervelo, but look at how the other teams are forming behind them. If they should falter, there's the lime green and white jerseys of Team Liquigas Cannondale. Those are looking after the interests of Ivan Basso, and next line of riders is the red and black team of BMC Racing. That's the team of Cadel Evans. I have to say, BMC have been phenomenal so far in the Tour de France. They've taken Cadel Evans round and put him in exactly the right place at the right time on every individual stage so far, and that's why Cadel is currently sitting in second place at a single second from Thor Hushovd. He's waiting.
Well, we're looking at the peloton absolutely flying now. Garmin-Cervelo are trying to save the day for Thor Hushovd, and they're going to have a lot of chasing to do in the next 16 kilometers. Just a glimpse there of Fletcher. He's been caught. I think we can show you that. He's just been caught. This was the capture, and he went straight by. He's just applauding the chase now. What can you say for a man that, through no fault of his own, is now back in the peloton and off the back? 20 kilometers to go for the peloton. They are closing in, but can they reduce that gap? Minute 7 is the gap. He needs to win by 1 minute and 30 seconds. And Thomas Voigtler will give it all now, because yellow to a Frenchman is like a red rag to a bull.
It certainly is, and by the way, it was the Saint-Firmin, which is the great festival of the Basques, just the other day as we head up this fourth category climb. The top of the climb is at 15 kilometers to go. Voigtler out of that saddle now in that inimitable style of his, battling. It looks like he's having a fight with the bike all the time when you compare it to the smooth pedaling action of Luis Leon Sanchez in second position. And Sandy Cassar has seemed to be in difficulty for the whole day, but
he stays there.
You cannot get rid of him.
He's suffering, but he's staying there, and don't be surprised if he wins the day either and makes it a perfect day for the French, because Voigtler has no choice now. He's the strongest man of the three. He's got to use all of his energy. He can't think of winning the stage. He's thinking of winning the yellow jersey. So it's almost certain he won't win the stage, because the other two will take it off him. But he wants 1 minute and 30 seconds of his lead conserved by the line.
That's the...
Hogeland stays in the race today, he will get the polka dot tonight. No matter where he finishes, he's got the points in the bag.
Well, that's the important thing for him, as we again have a quick look down on that Castle of Alouze, which commands a very big view over the gorges of the River Trière. And it really is quite a remarkable thing. In fact, there was a great movie, a very famous French movie was filmed in here called The Grand Vadrouille. And that was a movie of Louis de Funès, and it was filmed very close to the chateau and involved a car chase between German soldiers who were bombarded with pumpkins. A great movie, if you like, Louis de Funès.
Yeah, but you know, they knocked it down, but the bishop was so furious he had it rebuilt. Anyway, 4 minutes and 9 seconds is the gap. This is really, really cat and mouse now. It's going to be very, very close, I can assure you that. And the rest of the race now is leaving all of the chase to Garmin-Cervelo, the American team, who have a Norwegian as the race leader. And they've got to really now try and close this gap to 1 minute 29 seconds.
Yeah, and still the big teams, when we look at Leopard Trek, BMC and the others, they're still not coming to the front.
We are looking for the summit of the Côte du Château d'Aleuze now, with the penultimate climb of the day. The gap is still possible for Voigtler to take yellow. 4 minutes 8 seconds. He comes up to the top. He gets the 1 point available here, but he won't be in the polka dot jersey tonight unless Hogeland, who is injured, does retire. There's the green jersey, Philippe Gilbert. Now he's got a problem. Goodness me, he's going to change the bike too.
Quick change there, he jumped off, he's waiting for the tip. But this is badly organised by Philippe Gilbert. He should have waited for the team car to be up alongside him, giving the mechanic a chance to be ready. And in fact, Philippe Gilbert's bike, Phil, should have been on the other side of the machine, so it was on the same side as the mechanic.
Absolutely, and Gilbert here is now going to have to sprint back. He's on the climb too of the Côte de Château-de-Leuze. 4:11 is the gap, and we only have 14 kilometers and a bit left to ride here, while Gilbert is preoccupied to get back into the race. The boys at the front are indeed Garmin Cervelo, trying desperately now to take Thor Hushovd to the rest day in yellow, and it's looking increasingly as though it could be a Frenchman tomorrow in yellow.
Well, I must admit, it was pretty impressive the way Philippe Gilbert jumped off his bike there. That was a serious cyclocross dismounting, but I'm not sure he was quite prepared, and the team mechanically certainly wasn't prepared for that quick bike change. He has got the power, but the fact that he's riding himself through all of these riders who've been dropped is going to make it very difficult for him to get back up to the peloton. I'm sure there will be teammates who've stopped alongside to try and pace him back in, but he a few moments ago stage, and now all of a sudden he's thinking about trying to catch up with the pack.
And look at the way he goes through the riders who are giving up for the day here. Those two riders there spend time down in the team leader, Alexander Vinokourov. They've dropped off now, and Vinokourov out of the race with a suspected pelvis broken. But this is still Garmin Cervelo doing now what they should have done a little bit earlier on, I suspect. They knew they would get no help at this stage of the Tour de France. 4 minutes 13 seconds. The leaders are still hovering around the same time or pulling away.
They are pulling away. It's gone up to 4 minutes and 12 seconds now as Philippe Gilbert makes his way past all of these riders. No panic on his face at all, but it was not the ideal place to have a mechanical incident. He obviously was quite concerned about what was going on, because he had to stop very abruptly and go straight by and get himself into the peloton.
Still no French stage win of the Tour de France. They've got a 66% chance up front because they've got two Frenchmen there, but Luis Leon Sanchez, the Spanish rider, might spoil that. He is a big opportunist. Voigtla is committed to wearing the yellow jersey. He couldn't have dreamed of that happening today, but it's been perfect for him. A lot of things he could not have foreseen, of course, while he was in the breakaway. Well, Garmin Cervelo are doing what they can. This is only a fourth category climb, Paul. It's blooming hard for fourth category.
I think it's the hardest fourth category climb we've had to contend with so far in the Tour de France this year. The men doing the pacemaking on the front, this is Thomas Danielson, used to hail from Durango, Colorado, now lives in Boulder, Colorado, along with, I think, almost the whole of the American professional peloton. Just behind him, Christian van der Velde. In the wings, over to the left-hand side, George Hincapie. Sitting right behind Hincapie, Cadel Evans. Evans has always been poised near the front end of the spear of the main field on every day that you'd like to throw out at him.
Well, it's been a tough return here for Philippe Gilbert. The boys weren't ready for that bike change, and he's now having to cut his way through a splintering peloton. Every time he catches someone, he has to leapfrog to the next gap. It couldn't be harder at the moment. Just seeing the rider go by, Nicky Sorensen there. He was the rider that was knocked off by that motorcyclist a couple of days ago. Here's Contador alongside Schleck.
And just behind them with the red helmet, that was Andreas Kloden, the new leader of Team Radio Shack. Tommy Danielson waited a long time before he earned himself selection for the Tour de France, and now at 31 years of age, he really is cherishing the fact that he's enjoying this tour.
I think he's even 33 at the moment anyway. He's getting older by the minute, that's for sure. 4 minutes.
This climb, Phil, he should make contact with the peloton.
Well, these are the quick descents, and Voigtla is the ace at descending here. Again, he's put the distances into the other two in the breakaway. I don't even saw the look on Voigtla's face there, but Sandy Cassar is having to work so hard to hang on to his fellow Frenchman. Luis Leon Sanchez doesn't like descending, but he's taking a few risks just at the moment. And Philippe Gilbert has hooked up with the back of the peloton. Next problem is, how does he get back up to the front of it? So the sun is high in the sky. The rain did stay away all day for us today, but it didn't seem to stop the problems of the Tour de France today. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll take these boys to the finish. See you in a moment. I have a feeling that it'll probably be Luis Leon Sanchez who might make the winning move, but Sandy Cassar is one of the shrewdest bike riders around when it comes to winning stages.
Well, coming up to the 15-kilometre to go banner is Johnny Hogeland. He's 12.5 minutes in arrears. I don't think he's got any worry about being eliminated. And anyway, if he finished outside the elimination time, Phil, I'm sure after that dramatic crash, the referees would actually bend the rules a fraction and keep him in the race, and that would be a fair decision.
Well, he's just passed under the 15-kilometre to go banner. The boys are at 5 kilometres to go up front. So he's lost 6 miles to the group he was racing with. He's in pain, he's limping home. There's no way he will be eliminated, Paul. He will get in. And you're right, I think if he were eliminated, the judges would have to take pity on him and let him back in.
Well, you have to question as well what the tactics are going to be after the rest day for Team Rabobank, because Luis Leon Sanchez has always been regarded as a possible high finisher in the Tour de France, and if you give him 4 or 5 minutes at the end of today, it's going to put him right up at the top of the leaderboard. Currently started the day in 36th place at 3:23, but give him a chance of possible glory in a yellow jersey in the Pyrenees, he'll grab it.
Right up far right there, we climb right round the cathedral on the right. It is a very steep bank that we climb up, and it's only 4th category, but it doesn't really matter now because right on the top is the finishing line.
It's a nice wide road, about 7 meters wide, but it is, as you said, Phil, 1.6 kilometers long for an average gradient of 6.1%. And they're very lucky because the finishing straight is 130 meters of flat.
Yes, it is. They just rise out the bowels of the Department of the Cantel to race along the top round the square. Sunday in the centre of France, the arrival of the Tour de France. A Frenchman is going to pull on the maillot jaune, but will a Frenchman win the stage? The odds are 2-1 here.
Well, the odds are 2-1. Sandy Cassar, very clever when it comes to finishing off in races. He's won 3 stages in the Tour de France on his career. Luis Leon Sanchez has won 2. So too has Thomas Voeckler. But Thomas Voeckler has an added incentive at the end of today's stage. He is dreaming of getting back into that yellow jersey, a yellow jersey that he hasn't worn, Phil, since, as you said, since 2004.
This is the climb. That hairpin left is the start of the climb now as Voeckler looks at the other two. He wants to win the stage as well as take yellow. He's licking his lips, but you know, they will jump him. Somebody has got to go. There's a sharp right hairpin now right beneath the walls of the city. Then they'll slowly swing round to the left and come out into the square. And Voeckler has got to push on. He can't wait. There's no finesse now. He wants every second he can take out of this breakaway.
Well, he's riding. He really is doing a great job of work. He knows it's all about the time. I know he wants to win the stage if he can, but more importantly, he wants to give a big buffer for the yellow jersey to keep it for possibly a couple of days into the Pyrenees. He's looking over his shoulder. He probably feels that his biggest challenger will come from 131, Sandy Cassar. But watch out for a late move by Luis Leon Sanchez, because if he gets the jump and he gets 20 or 30 meters advantage, he'll be a hard man to pull back. He's a great solo artist.
The sharp right-hand bend is just after this red kite, signifying 1 kilometer from the finish. And I think that's where Luis Leon Sanchez will put in his big attack as they come off that bend in the shadow of the chateau. And it looks as though he's really very, very tired now, but he's still trying to force a reaction. He still wants to win the stage, Thomas Voeckler. He wants to end it as a perfect day, and it's a big result for his new sponsors as well. But he's got to keep going. He wears the flashes on the cuffs of his jersey, a former champion of France. Lost the title. He finished 3rd, in fact, just before the start of the Tour. Now we're coming up towards that right-hander.
It's an awful right-hander. It gets just that little bit steeper. The average gradient of this climb is 6.1%, but when they take that right-hand hairpin bend, it kicks up to around about 10%. They haven't quite got there yet, as Thomas Voeckler is still prepared to do all of the pacemaking. He hasn't even looked round to anyone, Phil, to say, come on, guys, give us a bit of a hand, because he knows what the answer will be. No.
Absolutely. He's got to lead all the way, as he's led for this last 10 or 15 kilometers, and it's hurting all the way to the summit now. Now, the right-hander is just ahead. He needs to ride round on the inside of the wall so he can force the moves to come through on his left shoulder, because he wouldn't be looking around like this if he wasn't thinking of winning the stage as well as taking yellow. The clock very much on his side here. The gap is 4:48 at the moment. He's in the lead of the Tour de France by 3 minutes tonight, but he still wants to win the stage as well.
Well, he knows what this race finish is like. He's been here in the Tour de France when it's been to Saint-Flour in the past. He knows where to make the effort. It's going to be a big effort. The sprint will probably not start, Phil, until around about that 150 metres to go when they take the left-hander and finish into the Allée of Georges Pompidou.
They are really, really tired. And well, they might be after this day of racing here, but that's why they haven't gone early, because they're not confident in their own ability anymore. And look at this. Voigtler has pushed them out in front. He's now riding behind them. He is going to attack these riders, and here he goes. That was a perfect move, and he's put it in. And Luis Leon Sanchez saw his shadow, Paul, and got the kick on him.
Well, he knew that was the moment to move, and Luis Leon Sanchez has got the power in those legs. Thomas Voigtler could not get onto his slipstream, Phil, and it looks like the Spaniard is going to get himself another victory at the Tour de France as Voigtler comes round. It's going to be a yellow jersey for Voigtler. He dreamed of the stage victory.
And in his favourite area here, as Luis Leon Sanchez wins again. He won down the road at Aurillac, where the race restarts in 2 days' time. He gets the victory. The clock will start now, and that's when we'll find out just by how much Thomas Voigtler leads the Tour de France when we restart from Aurillac on Tuesday. And Sandy Cassar, I think he really was tired. He's lucky to have hung on here to finish with the leaders, I think.
Well, a well-timed sprint there by Luis Leon Sanchez. He is a great rider. I remember when he won the Tour Down Under in Australia, everybody then, the Spanish press at that time, was saying this man will become the new Miguel Indurain because he's a fantastic individual time trialist. There he got only his second victory of the year so far. As we go a little bit further out on the course, it's all about the time. It's all about how much this race is going to be led by Thomas Voigtler. Not a question of whether or not he will lead. The time gap is what we're going to be interested in now.
It is, and we'll follow that with a great deal of interest. The boys now are heading up. They're making that sharp left-hand turn, so they're on the climb up to the finish, about 1.5 kilometers away from the line, so the gap has closed down, but the clock now is counting. And very interesting to see. Cadel Evans is interested in everything, and Andy Schleck is right with him, with Frank, Tony Martin. They can't afford to let a gap open of a single second. That's apparent.
Well, it was quite interesting to spot that the white jersey of Robert Hessing, Phil, who was in awful difficulty over the first few kilometres of the race today, is riding in about 10th position.
Well, maybe he's come through his bad patch. He was off the bat this morning. The leaders are under the last kilometre, still trying to get this perfect lead out here for Philippe Gilbert, if they can. They've got their man on the front, Jelle Van Aert, to try and bring him up to the line. Schleck is sitting in. Oh, and it's the crowd there. And that, I don't know what happened there, but that almost caused the peloton to go down. Now, Philippe Gilbert is lining up. It looks as though Cadel Evans might be taking him on.
Well, Cadel Evans sitting right on the wheel. Look at the gap. In fact, this race is completely splintered. Levi Leipheimer is in this group. Most of the heads of state. There's Alberto Contador in about 5th position. Over to the right-hand side, you've got Peter Velets, Tony Martin on the left-hand side in the white jersey of HTC. And further back down the road, well, it's not surprising, really, to see there's TJ Van Garderen.
Yeah, TJ's lost his polka dot tonight, the American, and Thor Hushovd has lost his yellow. The battle is being enacted here. Philippe Gilbert trying to finish it off now to get himself the 4th place. Cadel Evans happy to ride in his slipstream, but not challenged. Gilbert sprints away here to get the 4th place. He's had a great day in the green jersey competition, and all these points are going in the bank. He's getting himself quite a lead in that, but Cadel Evans will chase anything that moves. He's just dropped back 1 place here to Velits as Velits comes up, also finishing strongly. Watch out for Peter Velits for a high finish in this year's Tour de France. Cadel Evans, Frank Schleck, Tony Martin and Andy Schleck, they're all over there, but there is a time gap from there. But the time clock is saying it to be about 2.5 minutes, 2 3/4 minutes tonight in yellow for Voigtler.
All of the big names, Phil, were mainly in that group. I noticed Andreas Kloden was in there for Radio Shack. Alberto Contador was not far away. The same time will be given to him. Peter Velets was very aggressive to chase down Philippe Gilbert, and that will probably move him to the top of the pack as leader of HTC High Road. And accompanying Jens Voigt shaking his head, yeah, I know, Jens, it's been a pretty hard day this afternoon. Joined on the left-hand side there by Stuart O'Grady. These guys today, Phil, know that they have had a battle on their hands.
Well, he's been a brilliant leader of the Tour. He's handled it really, really well. Outwitted today by a long attack by a Frenchman. He knew it was all over. Pressure's gone off Thor Hushovd now, the world champion. He'll pass on that maillot jaune tonight to Thomas Voigtler. TJ Van Garderen never had a chance to defend that polka dot jersey on the left of our picture. The American didn't get in the move, and all the points on a big day of mountain climbing points have gone through to Johnny Hugeland and to Thomas Voigtler. Hugeland, and he will finish, but he's limping in, and he's very, very, very sore. Whether he starts again on Tuesday, that's another discussion, but he certainly will be the king of the mountains tonight.
Well, two former teammates there chatting. Thor Hushovd, the former leader of the yellow jersey competition here at the Tour de France, chatting with Stuart O'Grady. David Miller in the white jersey on the left-hand side for Garmin Cervelo. He started the day high up in the overall standings in 9th place, but as you can see, his elbow there is severely bandaged up. Jürgen Roelandts over to the left-hand side. Garmin, the Omega Pharma Lotto rider, did a lot of work to be responsible for the 4th place finish of Philippe Gilbert this afternoon.
Well, there will be changes tonight. There is a new leader. You're right, Peter Vellich could be in the top 5 or 6 riders tonight with that performance, because men have been dropped today. That is for sure. The crowd waiting to see the erstwhile maillot jaune, who has held it all bar the opening day of the Tour de France until today. Bring them on in. Stuart O'Grady with him as well. David Miller, he's lost, as Paul has said, his high place. He was 19 seconds off that yellow jersey at the start today. He's fallen certainly once, and we think twice out on the course today.
Well, it's been a massive battle out on the course. Some riders crashing on of their own volition. Other riders being taken out by reckless driving by some members of the press, and some members, it looks to me as if it was one of the television cars that were out there and took out a very rather nastily Johnny Hugeland and Juan Antonio Fletcher. And I got my fingers crossed that those two guys get across the line and finish inside of the time limit, and they're not too injured and are able to continue racing the day after the rest day.
They're going to show us some interesting results. Luis Leon Sanchez gets his 3rd historical win of the Tour de France. Voigtler 5 seconds back. Cassar 13 seconds back. Gilbert brings the rest home, 3 minutes 59 down. Peter Vellich just behind him. Good result. Evans, Andy Schleck, Tony Martin, Frank Schleck, Cunego. Slowly but surely, Damiano Cunego is living a great tour here. Contador in the same time as the men that matter in 12th place. Tommy Danielson, despite his hard work, in 13th place there. And Nicholas Roach also enjoyed, but lost a little bit of time, 8 seconds, along with Leipheimer again, as they came in just off the back of that field. So a few more seconds, but it's a loss, and that's what counts. There's the winner, and I've just heard that they're going to give the First Spirit Award today to both riders who were knocked off in the front, and that is Fletcher and Hugeland. That is a very good decision. We'll wrap everything up shortly. Come back. So the peloton are still coming in dribs and drabs as we cruise around the area of the Cantal. This is where the riders will go training tomorrow and enjoy. Many of them will be off down to the doctor's surgery to check out all the wounds they've had. We don't know how many riders have gone out the Tour de France today, but I would say at least 12 riders, and the vast majority have gone out with serious injuries. Here we go. The first man up is Luis Leon Sanchez. In history, his 3rd ever stage win in the Tour de France, but this was a great one for him.
No, it certainly was, and he played his role in the breakaway. That little sign up to the sky, by the way, was for his brother, who died a couple of years ago in a quad bike accident, and he did exactly the same thing the last time he won a stage.
Yes, he did. But today it's happy days for Rabobank. It's been one of the most successful teams of the year. They started out with a big victory in the Santos Tour Down Under with their Australian member of their team, and now it looks as though they're continuing it all the way into the month of July in the Tour de France. But Robert Kessing may be recovering. He's showing signs of fresh life towards the finish today after being dropped early on. He's their big man for the overall. Bernardino, the 5-time winner there, congratulating him. Covered in cuts and bruises and torn equipment. They're just coming in with this big group of riders. They've dropped to the back of the field, and the crowd are picking them out. They have been awarded the Fighting Spirit Award of the Tour de France today. It's never been awarded to more than one rider on any one day. The judges have said both will receive it, both will go on. Let's go back down, Paul, because this is where Tommy Voeckler is reliving his life of 2004.
Well, Phil, you know, I just looked at the race book this morning, and I knew this was the kind of day that Thomas Voeckler would look for, and he lived up to the occasion, and he was the firepower in the breakaway. But it was a breakaway full of firepower with Sandy Cazar and Luis Leon Sanchez, and initially with Juan Antonio Fletcher. It was a breakaway that was doomed to survive.
Listen to the crowd. A Frenchman in yellow after 9 days of the Tour de France, and it's the most popular Frenchman currently racing a bike.
And his team manager, Jean-René Bernadotte, was 55 years of age just the other day. What a birthday present.
Absolutely. It was not a suitable stage for Tommy the day Jean-René was 55, but today was. Now, which way shall I go first? They've changed the system since 2004.
I think he's changed the system.
Look at this, Raymond Poulidor, the great Frenchman who battled on the nearby Puy de Dôme with Jacques Anquetil all those years ago in 64, I think it was.
Yeah, long time back. Big battle with Jacques Anquetil on that occasion. Anquetil getting the better, but Voeckler now leads this race, Phil, by 1 minute and 49 seconds from Luis Leon Sanchez, and 2:26 back to Cadel Evans, who is still sitting as best of all of the pre-race favourites.
Hoogland coming in. Don't you see the blood running down? Just catching a glimpse of his leg there. He went flying into that barbed wire fence. I should imagine he's punctured like a porcupine on his back just now. Well, as we wander around this beautiful zone, might even get out the bike myself tomorrow. It's such a pretty area, isn't it? Let's have a look then. This is the Michelob Ultra overall standings. The new leader tonight, only the third leader in 9 days, ahead of Luis Leon Sanchez in the break and winning the stage at 1 minute 49. Evans remains in the top 3 at 2:26. The Schlecks, steady progress up for Andy. He's now 5th at 2:37. Tony Martin is best of the HTC High Road, but Peter Velits is coming up. He's 7th. And Andreas Kloden crashed today, but he got back. He still remains the best hope of Radio Shack. Gilbert is also in a high place. Ivan Basso's quiet, but sitting on a good position overall. The white jersey stays on the shoulders of Robert Gesink. I spoke with Dutch journalists last night. They said, no, he's not going to make it. He'll be lucky to finish the Tour. We think he's seriously injured. He went off the back in the first hour today. They got him back in the race. His team went back for him. He finished pretty well today. He keeps his place overall as the best young rider, and tomorrow he gets a little bit of a rest, so a chance to recover. And that's what is the secret of success in the Tour de France, the art of recovery. So you can go out every day and give it your best.